Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put
Not good. Believe me, not good.
What's up, everyone? A pleasant good evening, one and all. Welcome to the Do Dissidents podcast. My name is Keaton Weiss, here, of course, with Russell Dobler. Opa! Thank you all very much for accommodating a slightly later time slots. Won't get into exactly why we had to do that. Shit is fucked up and bullshit. That's why. That was one of my favorite protest signs ever. You remember that guy from Occupy Wall Street? That white kid with the sunglasses holding up a cardboard sign at Occupy Wall Street saying shit is fucked up and bullshit. That's one of my favorite signs ever. Because I was a tour guide back during the heyday of Occupy, and I would spend some time at Occupy, and it would come up on my tours every now and then. And you get the tour guests I had were mostly like Groupon customers from like Jersey and Long Island, so very much like suburban Republicans, basically the current Democratic base, but at the time they were Romney voters, right? So they were like, what are they protesting? I don't understand. What are they protesting? I just wanted to show them the picture of that kid. Shit is fucked up and bullshit. That's what they're protesting. So shut up. Okay? Shut up and eat your chocolate. Give me my tip and get lost.
At the time.
You were a theater. Yeah, you weren't in the tour game at the time.
I was not. A lot of my actors were going down there and taking part in it. I did not have time because.
Well, that was back. See, the different era. It was only 12 years ago, but that's back when like actors had a certain radicalism. You see, this all happened very quickly. It all turned very, very quickly.
Well, that's why I was able to still work in that industry at that time. I've said many times, like I would get canceled in 5 minutes if I were to try to work now.
Right, like to do it now.
No, exactly. I mean, it wasn't, like you still had, don't get me wrong, I mean, actors generally, by my time, and probably always, don't tend to come from the rough side of town. But this whole, what I increasingly consider a psyop, where you've convinced an entire generation that who you like to fuck constitutes a politics. That hadn't happened yet, right? Like to have an actual politics, you still had to have politics.
Right.
You had to actually have politics, and it was kind of assumed if you were on the left, you had some kind of economic position.
Right.
It was more than just like how you like to get off. Like that wasn't the politics, and now it's kind of been reduced to that. So, no, very different times. No, really, a lot of my actors were going down there and taking part in that.
Oh, I buy it. I mean, I was in theater at the time too. I wasn't doing it full time. Obviously, very few people are lucky enough to get to do it full time. But yeah, no, absolutely, that was very much the kind of crowd down there, amongst other kinds. It was actually a very, very diverse bunch down there. You had a lot of European tourists would actually come through that park and walk around, and they would bring their kids, and it was it was a very, very pleasant atmosphere for the most part.
Look, Hans, the hippies, they are fucking over there on Vesey Street. Let's run over there. Let's get that on film. They are fucking right out in the open, just like Berlin.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Folks, Russell, this is his actual last dispatch from abroad, and then he will be back on Friday. I understand you saw Roman Holiday at an outdoor old Greek theater.
Yes, it's actually CNN, for what it's worth, has listed this place as one of the 10 best outdoor cinemas in the world. This is a thing here in Athens for some reason. There are like 3 of them that are kind of famous, these outdoor cinemas that they only run through October. They only run during the warm months. So yeah, I saw Roman Holiday was playing. Right, because they rotate different movies every 3 days. Actually, you'd be very excited about what's starting there at 10 o'clock, starting tomorrow for 4 days afterwards.
What's that?
Your favorite movie. This is what happens when you fuck a stranger in the ass.
They're doing the Lebowski out there? Oh, that would be great.
They're doing Lebowski for 4 days, four nights, starting at 10 o'clock.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean that's one weird thing about being American, because you go to this movie palace. This place has been there since 1935, and you look at their decor, and what's it going to be? Like Greek movie icons? There aren't any, right? I mean, unless they got famous in American movies like Anthony Quinn or something. So I mean, it's all picture images of James Dean and Elizabeth Taylor, right? Like, if you're gonna be nostalgic for golden age of cinema, I mean, what else is it? It's American. I mean, that's one thing about being American. You can never escape your culture. And they talk a lot about different kinds of privilege. One kind of privilege nobody ever talks about is having English as your native language. Because there's really no other language that you could speak where you could just go travel without any problem, right? I mean, you can just go and speak English. Everybody knows what you're saying. Very, very few elderly people will not know what you're saying, but pretty much everybody does. Trying to be a tourist if your native language is Pashto,
right? Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it would be completely. It would be a fucking nightmare. Right?
Oh yeah, what can you do?
I mean, anywhere you go, or I mean, maybe not anywhere, but I mean, pretty much. If there's any language you want to be able to speak as a tourist, it's English. And that has definitely occurred to me because sometimes I'll see Chinese tourists and stuff, and they have a much harder time getting around because who speaks it, right?
Of course, yeah. No, absolutely.
But the movie was also very interesting to see in that context because the movie is made at this time of absolute American confidence in itself, right? So the way that they move through Italy in that movie, and that's very typical of movies with Americans abroad at that time, is like they own the place. Right. Like the people who live in Italy are a kind of adorable, comical cast of bombastic characters.
Right.
While the Americans kind of, are the star. Yeah, everyone's accommodating them. Everyone's serving them. It's this very unconscious attitude of, and that's what's kind of interesting about it. Because on the one hand, you got Gregory Peck, is very much in keeping with the leading men of that time, where they were meant to represent this American ideal of the average guy. That's why none of these guys are particularly handsome in that period in any conventional sense, right? Gregory Peck is, he's kind of funny looking, actually. There's a period where you got guys like Gregory Peck, Fred Astaire. I mean, it's often been observed. Part of the point of Fred Astaire was that a guy who looked like that could dance that way, right? That was part of the appeal,
of course,
of Fred Astaire. Gary Cooper, Jimmy Stewart. These guys are not these stunningly handsome men. Clark Gable, right? And you do have it's a little thing, but it's interesting. For anybody who doesn't know the plot, it's Audrey Hepburn, and this was the movie that introduced her, actually. It was the one that made her a star. She'd only done like little bit parts before that. She's an aristocrat. She's a princess who's on tour and hates the life of a royal and escapes and goes incognito into the streets of Rome to have an adventure like a normal person, and meets up with Gregory Peck, who's a newspaper man who realizes who she is but pretends that he doesn't know who she is so he can get close to her and get the story and get paid a lot of money for an exclusive story about her running around wild in Rome. But at one point she recites a poem, and she says it's her favorite poem, and she says it's Keats, and he says Shelley. And, she repeats it. It's Keats. No, it's Shelley. That's very American of that period, right? It's that this average newspaper guy knows better than this educated aristocrat. That's the whole point of that exchange, that the average guy can be more sophisticated. But even so, the Italian people are there for local color, and they're like adorable peasants, right? So even within this thing where you're making this very democratic, average guy kind of a sensibility, the other peoples of the world are there to entertain and serve the adventures of Americans.
Oh yeah, they're very much, like you just said. It's very much like part of the scenery, indeed.
Right.
Just like the building, just like the architecture, and indeed.
Right. Everything's there for the Americans.
For them. Right.
But
it's a good movie. It's a charming movie. My wife loves that movie. It's one of her favorites. So
it's charming. It was a lot of fun, and I will say on another level, you watch something like that, and you definitely say, critical analysis aside, we just don't manufacture movie stars anymore. You watch that and you feel like, these are fucking movies. Like Audrey Hepburn was ethereal. I mean, she seemed like she's from another world, right? I mean, there's just something almost inhuman about them. It was just, sure, it's partly the black and white and the aesthetic of the time kind of removes it from reality a little bit, makes it a little more special in a certain sense than later on with Verite, they're trying to do a more gritty reality kind of thing, whereas these movies were just made in a way that was more fantasy in a way, just the way they were made. But also just those kinds of actors just don't exist anymore. We just don't even produce people like that anymore, even if you wanted to go back to that.
All right. So, guys, what we're going to do tonight, I just want a little bit of a note here because Elected felt a little snubbed. So I just want to let you know why that is. In our back end of our software, we see the YouTube chat scrolling. I see the Rumble chat on my phone, which I'm now going to monitor. Jake, our friend and producers in the booth, will field Rumble rants. So any monetized Rumble chats as questions that we put up on the screen and read, he'll field. But Jake, if you see any other kind of cool Rumble chats, just like every once in a while, if you see a cool YouTube chat that you want to flag for us and put a banner, please do that, because I don't want the Rumble crowd to feel like we can't see them. It's just I can't see them because they're not in our scroll in our software here. All right, so that's how that goes, folks. We do want to move away from book recommendations in October to horror film recommendations because it is Halloween month. But I think what we should do, especially since we just talked about a movie, I think we should do our movie recommendation before the segment that it is related to. I think that would help tie it together. What do you think about that? Makes sense. I think it makes sense. So let's start. Speaking of getting canceled, let's start with a piece of news from our neighbors up north, CRTC, which is, of course, a Canadian media body. Registration for podcasts and streaming companies draws criticism. So you may have heard that the next genius move out of the Canadian government, this from the Canadian Radio, Television, and Telecommunications Commission, is that online streaming and podcasting services operating in Canada with 10 million or more in annual revenue in their country will have to register with that government body by November 28th of this year. Registration involves providing the legal name of a company, its address, its telephone number and email, and what type of services it offers. In its decision released Friday, the CRTC called a registration a, quote, very light burden. University of Ottawa law professor Michael Gaetz, the Canada Research Chair in Internet and E-commerce Law, describes the information being collected as limited, but said he suspects there is more to come from the CRTC. I think a lot of people take a look at this and feel it's the thin edge of the wedge and that more regulation is on the way, said Gaetz in an interview with CBC News. It's a perspective echoed by Canadian podcaster Jesse Brown, publisher of Canadaland, who told CBC News that Friday's announcement by the CRTC is concerning to him. What they're signaling is we're going to be regulating the space, but we're not telling you how. That makes it hard, very hard, he said. Tell me about it. That's how we feel here every time we go in here. The CRTC said it doesn't.
I'm a little perturbed that our audience is lagging on the super chat so that we don't actually qualify for this registration.
Yeah, well, that's what I was also going to say, folks.
You all really need to step up your game.
I didn't bring it up because it's not this segment yet, but this stream of ours is likely to get limited monetization with advertisements because subject matter being what it is, we're going to have to say the word Nazi quite a bit later on in the show. And I have a feeling last episode when we said the word Nazi a lot, it got limited ads put on it because they don't want you talking about Nazis too much for the advertisers' liking. So if you hear us refer to ourselves as Jewish over and over again, that's why, because we figure maybe we can cancel out all the Nazi mentions with the, hey, I'm Jewish, right? If every time the bot hears the word Nazi, they also hear, I happen to be Jewish, right? Maybe that'll cancel it out.
Just go for it.
Well, you're gonna have to find some new music to offset that, for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah. Any super chats go towards offsetting whatever we're gonna lose in ad revenue on the evening, but that's a chance we will have to take. The CRTC said it does not expect podcasters who host their content on their own websites or who make it available on subscription platforms would be required to register because their annual revenues in most likelihood would be below the proposed exemption threshold of $10 million. Now, of course, look, we, just as our friends at Hardlens Media and RBN and, all kinds of channels that are, on the smaller side of things, we all have censorship issues as related to like bots crawling around and picking up keywords and clips and things like that. And then you get a limited monetization on a video, or in the worst case, they'll take it down, right? But, most of the time, if you're the Canadian government, you're not going to really be threatened in a big way by a podcast doing less than $10 million a year, right? Like the idea that they're targeting bigger podcasts, that just means they're going to go after bigger threats, right? Because generally you're not really a threat to power unless people fucking listen to you. And that's where you get the money from, right? Now, however, it goes on. A larger company such as Spotify may need to register. Spotify told the CRTC during public hearings in July that it wanted to see podcasts exempted from regulation due to the economic strain the podcasting industry is currently experiencing. Now, I just want to...
you mean it wasn't a good idea to give $1 billion to Meghan Markle?
Right, yes, it puts a pinch on you. Yeah, exactly. I just want to go to here because one of the things that this is going to do is it's going to bring podcast platforms under this bill, C11. So controversial bill C11 to regulate online streaming becomes law. So this is the bill now that these podcast platforms are now going to be brought under. So this is from April, right? So the first version of this bill passed, 6 months ago now. After years of debate, the Senate gave its final approval Thursday to Bill C11, also known as the Online Streaming Act. It received royal assent shortly after. The bill makes changes to Canada's Broadcasting Act. The legislation requires streaming services like Netflix and Spotify to pay to support Canadian media content like music and TV shows. It also requires the platforms to promote Canadian content. Specifically, the bill says online undertakings shall clearly promote and recommend Canadian programming in both official languages as well as Indigenous languages. Now, this is how they're going to get you, okay? This is how they're going to do it, just like they do it here. They don't come down, right? There's not an order from on high in the offices of the government that says, Joe Rogan, off. What they're going to say is, now that you guys are brought under this act and you are compelled by law to promote Canadian content in Canadian language, we have to have a talk with you, Spotify, because those providers who you are obligated to promote, they don't want to have anything to do with a guy like Joe Rogan. And so if you want to keep broadcasting here, you might have to make things right with us by either bringing him to heel, or in Joe Rogan's case, he would definitely tell Canada, go get your fucking shine box. He doesn't need that market, right? But that's how they would do it. They would do it the same way they do it here. Not by decree, but by perverting the incentives, by saying, hey, if you want to be on our platforms, you're going to have to promote this content. And if they think that the stuff on your platform is problematic, then they're going to compel you to rectify that. So that's how I think this is going to happen. That's why that Bill C-11 is sort of integral to all of this.
The project I didn't get to before I left was my Canada as Aldous Huxley-esque vision of, more liberal kind of dystopia. And wow, I'm kind of glad I didn't do it before I left, because now I can incorporate this into it. Canada is really leading the way towards what a kind of neoliberal fascism looks like, which is kind of funny because, when South Park did the Blame Canada thing, the joke played because Canada was always so innocuous, right? Like, that's what was funny about it. The Canadians, they're so well governed and innocent. And, everybody wanted to flee there if this or that person became president. I mean, I guess the libs still want to go there if Trump gets reelected. But genuine leftists, I mean, that's a far worse option. I mean, honestly, because I've talked about going up to Buffalo. And one of the advantages when I was first talking about it, I was like, yeah, you can escape into Canada. Now I'm like, shit, I don't even know if I should go shopping in Canada with the stuff I say online. I could get arrested over there.
Well, no, it's a serious point. I mean, it's seriously something to think about, because I think about it sometimes too. We were on the sort of Obama Medicaid healthcare plan for years. And then when my wife got a job at a hospital, she qualified for, employer-based healthcare, which is private healthcare. And so we had to take it because once you qualify for it, you have to take it. And back when we had the government plan, the Medicaid plan, everything was free. Everything. There were no copays, no deductibles. Prescriptions were like 20 cents a piece or something like that, just crazy low. Now that we're on the, private plan, you get significant copays. My kid just spent 3 days in the hospital. I mean, I think the deductible on that's $2,500 or $5,000. So we're going to get at least a bill that big at some point for that hospial stay. Patreon.com/StewDissidents. You can go help us out there, please. Thank you very much. So I think a lot of times I'm thinking, wow, maybe we should just go to Canada where all this is taken care of, like a civilized place. But then, shit like this makes you think, well, if I moved to Canada, would we be able to do what we do? Like this is now half my job now is doing this show. Like, would I be able to work in this capacity there? It makes you think. And look, everything is a trade-off.
England too.
England too, of course.
The only reason we're not having this to this extent here, and obviously we've covered it a lot, they are trying to find ways around the First Amendment to censor. But in the end, we still have the First Amendment, and these countries don't have that. And I know whenever we talk about this regarding Canada, we'll have some Canadians that'll start talking about what they do have. Clearly, it's not the same fucking thing, given some of what's gone on there, which would get struck down in courts in 5 minutes in the United States if you tried to do it. So whatever you have, your charter, your version of a constitution, clearly does not have the kinds of robust protections for speech that we have in the United States. Whatever its failings, when you see cases, I mean, we don't cover all of them because it would be all we cover, because it's like a constant litany of insanity in England. In addition, you've had. I wanted to cover this actually, but we had just covered another story dealing with this in England. They had a woman for taking a picture of a sign that said "Women are women." They tracked her down from cameras. They found her house. The fucking police came to her house to talk to her about this. That is terrifying. That is a terrifying concept. So, Canada seems to be kind of keeping pace with that, with the truckers, with the debanking. I mean, it's really, when you look at what's happening in Canada, in a lot of respects, it's what these Democrats, frankly, would like to see here. It's what people like AOC, ironically enough, given that a lot of us, including myself, supported her at one time. It's what they want, right? Deplatforming works. So what are you talking about? What are you supporting when you say something like that? They want a regime like what's happening in Canada. And yeah, I mean, I'm kind of kidding, but I'm kind of not. Like, I don't think they're quite there yet. But it seems like Canada's getting to a place where doing a show like this, yeah, it would be dangerous for me to cross the border into Canada if this continues in this direction.
Well, you just don't know. I mean, you just don't know. I mean, they don't pass a thing like this for no reason, right? And now, I mean, look, we kind of have.
Well, it's part of a pattern. I mean, it's not just this.
No, that's what I was going to say. Well,
overall, what they've been doing.
Overall, they've been doing, right. And why else would they pass this if not to crack down on podcasters? I mean,
right. What's the purpose of it?
I mean, look, the Canadian government wouldn't want podcasters to, I don't know, platform Nazis, would they? Like, yeah, they wouldn't want them to do that. We have to be reasonable. Oh, wait, right. They did that. They did that, and they blamed Russian disinformation for the fact that they did that. And they said, if we make too much hay out of this, it's going to only embolden Russian disinformation agents. So it's a state that's completely out of control. They have no accountability for themselves. They feel no accountability to the public. They have no desire to even feign any sort of accountability, right? They'll literally, I mean, we're going to jump on the last segment of the night here, but it's an interesting bookend. They literally brought a Waffen SS soldier into the parliament, gave him a standing ovation, then gaslighted people about why they do it. And now you have the Canadian press, or that was the European press, try and explain away how, not all anti-USSR Waffen SS fighters were Nazis, right? I mean, just absurd.
All right, I've told this story on the air before, but I'm going to quickly tell this because it's so relevant. All right, so I was in Canada back in the 90s, and I went to the Kensington Market in Toronto, which is a place where you can get all kinds of secondhand stuff and everything. And I bought this really cool vintage leather coat from the 40s. And the way that it was made back then, everything's very analog, like no plastic parts, right? So you have that hourglass profile with the shoulders coming out and the cinched waist. And the way you cinch it is you had to pull like an inner strap, and it was metal and
right.
all materials they would never use now, and it was so cool. And so I'm watching. I used to walk around wearing this coat in the winter, and I'm watching the History Channel, and they're showing the Battle of Stalingrad and looking at the German troops. I'm like, hang on, that's the coat I bought in Toronto, man. That's exactly the coat. So I looked it up, and yeah, that coat was standard winter gear for the Nazis fighting in Russia.
That's right. Yeah, you told me that before.
I said, oh, well, Uncle Gustav apparently retired to Toronto after the war, and
Right.
the kids sold this stuff out of the attic. So I got to say, I was not terribly surprised by this story. That was it kind of tipped me off that a lot of Nazis ended up in Canada.
Interesting. Yeah, you have told me that before. Pat Donahue, thanks for the $5. Appreciate it. Solidarity, lads, and hit the like button, folks. Yes, hit that like button, folks. We appreciate that very much. Albert Borman, thanks for the $2. Jimmy Dore is a prophet. Yes, lots to talk about in the Republican forced to vote saga, obviously, that met its climactic finale, at least for now. I shouldn't say it's a finale because they have a speaker to nominate. Abiding, 71. Thank you for the 99 cents. Appreciate that very much, my friend. Let's take a couple of Rumble rants here. Stone 122. Thank you. 60% of women are feminists. 75% of Jews are Zionists, according to Google. Is there a connection there? A connection what? Between 60% of women being feminists and 7? I mean, yeah. I mean, it's not terribly surprising. Although here we are, Russell and myself, holding down the non-Zionist Jew demographic right here. Bonzo Beans, thanks for the $1. Das ist ein guter live stream. Thank you. Thank you very much, Bonzo Beans. Well, Bonzo Beans is a man of many tongues, right? Because don't you say, are you from, where are you from, Bonzo Beans? I don't know. Let us know. I forget. Because you're either a patron or a Substack subscriber now, one of those two. But thank you. Appreciate that very much. All right, folks, we'll take some more super chats in a little bit. But right now, let's move right on along here. So, folks, this was a story that came across the wire very, very soon before the show. And this is something that we definitely wanted to cover. This is not on our thumbnail image promoting the live stream, though it certainly would have been had this broke yesterday. So let's go back in time about 5 days here to Senator Bernie Sanders in the aftermath of the House passing the spending bill without aid to Ukraine. I look forward to seeing Congress provide in the very near future financial support for Ukraine, which is valiantly struggling against Russian aggression. All right. Now, that got 3.5 million views as of this evening when I just screenshotted it because I kind of put this together last minute. But many in our space were not happy. Many of Bernie's followers were not happy because many of Bernie's followers were Bernie supporters, or at least former Bernie supporters. And so one group that did not take kindly to this was Code Pink. And so Code Pink showed up at Bernie Sanders' office today. Breaking, this is as of this morning, 50 activists, Vermont constituents, and former Bernie supporters are taking over Senator Bernie Sanders' office to demand he stop sending money to Ukraine. Then it broke a few minutes later at 11:11 a.m. Tweet came out from Code Pink. Bernie arrests nearly 10 activists who tried to meet with him to discuss peace in Ukraine. The police handcuffed activists simply for holding a sign quoting Bernie in 2022 when he said we needed diplomatic solutions. Now he says we need weapons and endless slaughter. So yes, Bernie's staffers had them arrested and taken out of the building. There are a few videos here embedded in this tweet. We're going to play one of them. This, I think, is the most damning one right now. So let's take a look.
Vermonters want peace.
Do you have any comment?
I'm from Vermont, and I voted for Bernie every time from Congress on. I wasn't there when he was mayor, but I worked for him and his campaign. I believed in him, and he has crushed all my hopes for some kind of sanity within this building.
He recently tweeted out that he wants to see more funding go to Ukraine a couple of days ago. Can I get your reaction to that?
I'm horrified. I'm horrified. I watched the carnage going on over there, and how can anyone say this is good? Cluster bombs. We're on the brink of nuclear war. How can he not? All the things he says, how can he not?
Why are they arresting you?
Thank you for holding up a sign, a quote from Bernie Sanders calling for dialogue. And in Bernie Sanders' office, they seem to suggest that war is solidarity, which is madness, how they're co-opting the language of peace and liberation to lead us to World War III. It's crazy. They're so out of touch, not just with the American people, but with the entire world. And this guy is supposed to be the progressive hero.
Yeah, what do we need Bernie to do?
We really just need him to step aside and leave room for other people who are actually going to fight for us, who are going to fight for peace. Because he obviously isn't courageous enough to fight for peace.
Peace, solidarity.
So there they are, being taken out of the building.
The progressive movement, goddammit. What are they doing? Me.
Exactly. Yep. Now, they were taken out of the building. They were arrested. They were booked. But they were let out, obviously, same day. And this is a beautiful picture here because I want people who call people like us and people like Jimmy and people like Kit and people like Nick and CJ and Savvy over at RBN and JB, people who call all of us right-wing grifters, and we say, hey, listen, we're not right-wing grifters. We're not right-wing at all. We are very, very consistent in our views, and it's just a matter of people in Washington reshuffling the way they think. It's not that Code Pink has changed their views. Well, I want to show people this. People who call us right-wing, because we get called right-wing a lot. I know, Jimmy, a lot of in this section of our space, we get called right-wing all the time. How about this? Marjorie Taylor Greene tweets out, "The war in Ukraine must end. Today I met brave Code Pink activists who protested for peace in Bernie Sanders' office. He had 11 of them arrested. Peace and free speech shouldn't be a partisan issue. We don't agree on most things, but we do agree Congress should stop fueling the war in Ukraine."
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
I want you to tell Code Pink that they're right-wing grifters. They go to protest Bernie Sanders' office, not because they hate Bernie Sanders, but because they were, as the tweet mentioned that I read a few moments ago, many of them his own voters. Many of them were Vermont's peace activists. So they went to appeal to their own senator. His staffers has them cuffed and thrown out of the building. And then when they get out, who do they run into? Marjorie Taylor Greene, who takes a photo with them and compliments them. So you tell me what, they're right-wing? Because why? Why? This has nothing to do with who they are. They went and did an action against the senator who they supported, and he had them thrown in the slammer, and she took a picture with them when they got out. So you fucking tell me what people are supposed to do. Give me a fucking break.
Right. Well, this is, we're going to get into this a little bit as well. This is coming up in the battle for the speakership, because frankly, if you look at now to be clear, I don't know his whole career. I'm sure I don't agree with most of his positions, but the idea of having the guy who platformed Matt Taibbi and RFK Jr. as well, Jim Jordan, as Speaker of the House, because he is one of the contenders, I would take him over Hakeem Jeffries in a heartbeat. Right? This is the world that we're living in. I would much rather have a House Speaker who's not a fucking degenerate scumbag who's going to go up there making these platitudinous pronouncements about beliefs in freedom and at the same time, be complicit in sending the IRS to the house of a journalist on the day that he testifies to Congress. Who would I rather be the Speaker of the House, given a choice between those? And I'm not saying, again, I'm sure I don't agree with Jim Jordan on most things, but I certainly agree with him on that. And in a so-called democracy, freedom of speech is existential. You don't have that, you don't have anything. So you empower a party that fundamentally does not believe in freedom of speech. That we're seeing, as we discussed in England and Canada, we're seeing where this goes if you really let these people do what they really want to do. We're seeing what that looks like. Yeah. So who do you side with? Do you side with the pro-war, anti-speech party, which at one time was the Republicans? That was the Republican Party. Of course. That's why people supported the Democrats. So now that those things have switched, you're supposed to still support the Democrats when those values have gone over to the other side, and this doesn't mean the Republicans are peaceniks. Their peace it's coming from a more traditional American anti-intervention place than a peacenik kind of a motivation. But hey, however you get there, I'll take it.
Well, yeah, because in this case, it's not just like this isolationist sort of nationalist perspective that's informing their stance on Ukraine. It is a critique of the war machine. It is a critique of the military-industrial complex. It is a critique of the profiteering and the grift and the skimming that's going on over in Ukraine, and the fact that we don't care about that because our contractors get rich either way. What the fuck do we care where the weapons go? All we care about is that they keep ordering more, right? There is a critique of that, just like there is a critique of big pharma on the right now all of a sudden. Right? I mean, there never used to be, but ever since we started, this whole business here, which, that's what I'll say about that. All of a sudden, they have a critique of big pharma, and the left doesn't, apparently. So, it's not right. So they're not coming at this from as venal and as sort of self-serving a position as they usually did. When you would usually see people like when Pat Buchanan spoke out against war, he was just saying, it's none of our fucking business. Who cares? We need our money here. That's not it. There is an anti-corruption angle to this that they talk about this from. And Matt Gaetz talked about that a lot in his battle with McCarthy, not just from a military standpoint, but all over. I mean, he went off on lobbyists and fundraisers and all that. I mean, we'll get to that in our next segment. But yeah, there seems to be much more of that. And that's partly because there's a populist surge on the right now. And that's basically what that is a large component of what populism is. It's an anti-corruption critique. It's not always a great anti-corruption critique, but hey, it's fucking something. In the Democratic Party, you have nothing.
Right. Well, not only do you have nothing, you have a corrupt aristocracy, or you have spokespeople for the aristocracy, really, servants of the aristocracy, who have taken it as their purpose in government to propagandize on behalf of the status quo and to rule anyone who criticizes it as out of bounds by labeling them right wing, right? That in and of itself is supposed to be the only critique that you need to level, right? If you have questions about the jab, you're right wing, right? If you don't believe in mandates, you're right wing. If you think Joe Rogan should be allowed to speak to as many people as want to listen to him, you're right wing. Right. Any critique of the system is automatically labeled right wing. And ironically, Nazis, right? You're Nazis, you're white supremacists. There's that. Even as their party bleeds people of color, there is no critique that is not based in white supremacy. That is the only possible place anyone who has a critique of the status quo could be coming from. Status anxiety, as they got into in the Vox article we covered a couple of episodes ago. So yeah, I mean, it's we're post-duopoly, we're not in bed with either, but the parties have switched places ideologically in the past in response to a shift in who their voters are. And we may be seeing a process like that.
Absolutely. And I want to amplify a tweet by our friend Colin Radix Carter, which I'm just going to do a screen share here because he made a really, really great point because Code Pink has refused to speak at certain anti-war rallies because of the fact that they were afraid of being called right-wing, right? They didn't speak at the Rage Against the War Machine rally. Medea Benjamin spoke there because she wanted to speak there, but Code Pink wouldn't endorse that rally. And there was the other rally that Jose put on, the Humanity for Peace rally, which Code Pink also boycotted, right? Because some of the speakers there were right-wing. And so I'm so glad that our friend Colin caught this, and he makes a great point. So Code Pink had Medea Benjamin not speak at Rage Against the War Machine. That's right. She didn't speak there because Code Pink wouldn't let her speak there. I misspoke. I said she did. She wanted to speak. Code Pink didn't allow her to speak. She attended and supported it, but Code Pink wouldn't let her speak there. So thank you again, Colin, for catching that. But he says, so Code Pink had Medea Benjamin not speak at Rage Against the War Machine because of some of the people who were speaking, but meeting up with Marjorie Taylor Greene is okay, right? And that's a good point because I think that's a teachable moment for Code Pink. Like, hey, you know, who was there to take a picture for you? Who tweeted out support for you? Marjorie Taylor Greene, right? So maybe that should change the way you think about some of these rallies, right? And I think that was a good point that Colin made.
Well, and it's also a lesson of history. I mean, the more that you try to suppress and censor people, the more you drive them into the arms of your enemies.
Exactly.
Right? Because you're giving them.
Right.
I mean, look at the lesson you just taught them. They went to the progressive icons, so-called. Bernie Sanders got fucking arrested, and Marjorie Taylor Greene's here to pose for pictures and support their right to speak. So what are they supposed to take away from that? You just made them much more open to working with the other side, you fucking idiots. What did you think was going to happen?
Yeah, and it's on you, obviously. It's not their fucking fault, right? They got to go wherever they're welcome. That's politics. That's how it's done. Paul Chu says, horror film recommendation, Top Gun Maverick. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Folks, you can support this program by going to patreon.com/due distance. Jake, can you hit that scroll for me, please, my friend? Because you got that queued up on your end. Thank you. Patreon members get their name up in the lights here on the program. They also get call-in access to our live streams, as well as access to 2 Patreon-exclusive streams per month. Those Patreon-exclusive streams take place on Rumble. They are uncensored streams where we get into topics that we wouldn't be able to get into as thoroughly over here. And I'm already seeing a bunch of stuff come across the wire that I'm really excited to cover on our next Patreon stream. So we will get that scheduled when Russ gets back, which is late tomorrow. So we'll convene on Friday, but we will have that Patreon stream sometime next week. And I'm already seeing a bunch of stuff that I'm looking forward to getting into. But those are a lot of fun. You get access to 2 of those per month, so we make it worth your while. Sign up, patreon.com/due dissidents or duedissidents.substack.com. If you sign up as a paid Substack subscriber or a Patreon member, you get access to those private shows, those little unlisted shows, and those are a lot of fun. We love doing those. And our goal is to hit 500 subscribers by the end of the year, at which point we will add a 4th stream. We would love to be able to kick off at 2024, which is an election year. There's going to be news coming at us faster than we could handle in 3 shows, so we want to be able to add that 4th show. We really need to get to 500 subs in order to make that happen. We're making progress. We're at about 320 now, so we are getting there. We get closer every day, which is great. But if you could sign up, that is how you support us. That's how you censor-proof these operations. It gives us a base of support so we can keep going no matter what happens to us on any of these censorious platforms that we are beholden to now. And so it really does help a great deal. Patreon.com/due dissidents for as little as $5 a month. Support the show and get access.
And don't forget, later on in the year, because our fundraiser was successful, we are going to be covering the primaries. And there will be the stuff that goes out on the main channel. And then there's going to be the drunken debauchery that we'll only put out for the patrons.
Right. You know, there will be exclusive material that we take from the road that goes on the Patreon when we do hit the road. And we are hitting the road thanks to all of your support. In January, the Iowa caucuses are January 15th. So Russell's going to be spending the second week of January in the frozen plains of Iowa. And then I will be in New Hampshire after that.
This is bad country.
Exactly. And then I will be going to New Hampshire after that. So we are very much looking forward to that, folks. Thank you very much for making this happen for us. Elizabeth Marshall just became a Medicare kid, way better than my work. Well, yes. No, that's how it goes. That is how it goes. I feel you. Thank you for the $2. And Elizabeth, you're a patron supporter, so thank you very much for supporting the show. Kid Ulysses, YouTube member. You can also support the show by clicking that join button next to that subscribe button over on YouTube. Kid Ulysses, American fascism is a fusion of Brave New World. Yeah, and 1984. Yes, well put. Well put. DC, thanks for the $5.
Yeah. See, that's what all these. Is it going to be 1984 or Brave New World? People never understood. Why choose?
Right, why choose? And you're right, it really is both. Canada is still a monarchy under the authority of King Charles III, says DC, and thank you for the $5. They never did a revolution, and we failed our attempted invasion, War of 1812. This is a new donor here, 715 Uruguayan pesos, I'm assuming, because here's some love from Uruguay. Well, thank you very much. That's very kind of you. We appreciate that. And I've never thought we had viewers from Uruguay. We've never been greeted by a Uruguayan viewer. We have several viewers overseas, but it's nice to see some support and some love from south of the border. So thank you so much.
You got to look at the YouTube demographics. We're very big in Uruguay.
We are. Maybe we should do a Uruguayan live show tour.
The president there was just announcing us.
Really? Well, we'll have to think about that. I didn't know. I don't know where he gets this news from. Hay is for horses, and Jenk keeps that shit stocked. Yes. Hay is for horses. That's what my mother-in-law says to my kids whenever they say, hey. She says, hay is for horses. So I'm familiar with that phrase.
Don't parents still say that?
Well, yeah, I mean, she's a little older. I don't want to get in trouble by talking about how old, but yeah.
I didn't know you married an older woman.
No. My mother-in-law says hey is for horses. No, Amanda doesn't say hey is for horses. No, my mother-in-law, Amanda's mother says hey is for. No, Amanda does not say hey is for. I was
under the impression you guys are around the same age. I had no idea.
Yes, we are around the same age. No, I said my mother-in-law says that. Their grandma says hey is for horses. Yes.
That makes more sense.
Yeah. Catch. All right, beautiful. All right, let's go on to segment number 3. All right, folks, so this is a big one. This is the big news of the week. This is history being made. Speaker Kevin McCarthy ousted in historic House vote as scramble begins for a Republican leader. This is from the AP. Speaker Kevin McCarthy was voted out of the job on Tuesday in an extraordinary showdown, a first in U.S. history, forced by a contingent, we're going to call them a squad, just to drive the point home, forced by a squad of hard right conservatives and throwing the House and its Republican leadership into chaos. It's the end of the political line for McCarthy, who has said repeatedly that he never gives up, but found himself with almost no options remaining. Neither the right flank Republicans who engineered his ouster nor the Democrats who piled on seem open to negotiating. Later in the piece, McCarthy's chief rival, Representative Matt Gaetz of Florida, orchestrated the rare vote on the obscure motion to vacate and pushed ahead swiftly into a dramatic afternoon roll call. McCarthy enjoyed support from most Republicans in his slim majority, but 8 Republican detractors, 8, again, a squad, you might say. Many of the same hard right holdouts who tried to stop him from becoming Speaker in January essentially forced him out. Stillness fell as the presiding officer gavelled the vote closed 216 to 210, saying the office of the Speaker is hereby declared vacant. So basically, you had Democrats facing the decision, do they bail McCarthy out or do they all vote to vacate, knowing that there was a contingent of Freedom Caucus Republicans who would tip the scales in the favor of bouncing McCarthy. That is what they decided to do. There was some talk about whether or not they would back him up. That's why Matt Gaetz said in his interview on CNN just over the weekend that if McCarthy is Speaker by this time next week, he will be serving at the pleasure of the Democrats, because even though McCarthy had most support within the GOP caucus, the question was, do the Democrats help the Freedom Caucus bounce him and cause chaos on the Republican side, or do the Democrats live up to what they say they care about, which is the fact that McCarthy was the adult in the room and he kept the government open and we care so much about that, right? There was some thinking that maybe the Democrats would throw him a lifeline, since don't forget, they do have to pass another spending bill in now, 41 days? But anyway, here's Kevin McCarthy's reaction, obviously taking it a little personal. Here's his words for Matt Gaetz.
Not a conservative. Not a conservative. Look, you all know Matt Gaetz. You know it was personal. It had nothing to do about spending. It had nothing to do about everything he accused somebody of he was doing. It all was about getting attention from you. I mean, we're getting email fundraisers from him as he's doing it. Join in quickly. That's not governing. That's not becoming of a member of Congress. And regardless of what you think, I've seen the text. It was all about his ethics. But that's all right.
Now, he mentions that he was raising
You insulted
money.
him a little bit. You got a little out of order yourself.
Exactly, yeah. He mentioned there that he was raising money off this, and Matt Gaetz was, in fact, raising money off this. Full disclosure, and look, I've never been on any Republican email lists, so I know that sounds weird, but I even got an email from Matt Gaetz somehow asking for money for this. I don't know. Maybe they're fans of the show. Yeah, exactly. Maybe they added dudeness to the show. But I did see Matt Gaetz actually did send out fundraising emails over this, because look, this is his 15 minutes of fame. You obviously milk it for everything you can get. But here's a guy who I had never heard of before, Representative Graves. Let's take a look at him on the House floor. He was quite upset and quite offended that Matt Gaetz, I apologize, would try to fundraise off of this. So here's an unknown schmuck. I never heard of this guy, but he's angry.
And all of a sudden, my phone keeps sending text messages. And all of a sudden, my phone keeps sending text messages. Text messages saying, hey, give me money. Oh, look at that. Oh, look, give me money. I filed the motion to vacate. Using official actions to raise money. It's disgusting. It's what's disgusting about Washington.
Again, I have no fucking clue who that guy is, but he must be from one of these southwestern sort of desert districts, because he sure got a lot of sand in his pussy, whoever that guy is. That guy is fucking upset about the fact that he is fundraising off of this. He's fundraising off of this. Matt Gaetz had an answer to that. I tell you, Matt Gaetz really, he was prepared for this moment. Let's hear Matt Gaetz respond to this accusation that he's raising money off of his action. Here he is, very, very eager to take that charge on head on.
And when it comes to how those raise money, I take no lecture on asking patriotic Americans to weigh in and contribute to this fight from those who would grovel and bend knee for the lobbyists and special interests who own our leadership, who have, boo all you want, who have hollowed out this town. And
let's listen to that again. I want you to listen to, I'm going to play this again from the beginning. He starts calling out the special interests and the lobbyists, and then when they boo him, he just... Beautiful. I didn't even see that. Good catch. Good catch. Yep. I want to play this again from the beginning. When they start booing him, and he says, boo all you want. I want you to picture AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Jamal Bowman doing that same thing. Because that's
we'd be in a different...
from them.
We'd be in a different world. We'd have a different show. Our focus would be different. We'd be fundraising for them if they were doing shit like that.
Exactly. So watch this again and just imagine this could have been AOC. Like, this could have been people who we sent in there thinking they were going to cause this kind of disruption.
And when it comes to how those raise money, I take no lecture on asking patriotic Americans to weigh in and contribute to this fight from those who would grovel and bend knee for the lobbyists and special interests who own our leadership, who have, oh, boo all you want, who have hollowed out this town and have borrowed against the future of our future generations. I'll be happy to fund my political operation through the work of hardworking Americans, $10 and $20 and $30 at a time, and you all keep showing up at the lobbyist fundraisers and see how that goes for you. I reserve.
Boom. He even had a little bit of that Jimmy Stewart, like crack in his voice. Who have hollowed out this town. That could have been a Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Yeah, this is the people's house, and you've turned it into a den of sin.
Exactly. That's very good. That's good. But he actually did sound a little bit like that there. But damn, was he ready for that fight? This is a guy who came in ready for a fight. Ready for a fight. That's what it's about. It's about being ready for a fight. He then went on Laura Ingram's show on Fox News and stuck it back in McCarthy's face a little bit. Let's hear a little bit of this.
I support President Trump, eager to campaign with him. Probably our private
Oh,
conversation.
sorry. I should have added context. So Trump has now been nominated for the speakership. And so I'm assuming the question here.
Somebody stepped up to sponsor him, right?
Yeah, exactly. I forget who it was. Somebody I'd never heard of. But I'm assuming the question here is, how do you feel about Trump taking over? Because you don't actually have to be a member of Congress to be Speaker of the House. They could vote for anybody Speaker of the House. So here's his answer.
I support President Trump, eager to campaign with him. Probably our private conversations I'm going to keep to us, but I think I'm in pretty good stead with the former president. You'll see me on the campaign trail with him soon. And by the way, you know who you won't see on the campaign trail at a big rally? Kevin McCarthy. Because if Kevin McCarthy took the stage at a Trump rally, he would be booed off of it like Lindsey Graham.
Boom. Now, I want to talk about this because the people who maintain that Gaetz made a mistake here cite the fact that the Republican Party is fractured, the Republican Party is in chaos, and that the Republican Party has a bit of a problem on their hands now. No speaker, another spending deadline coming up in 45 days. And you have a lot of the real diehard Republican partisans saying that Gaetz misstepped here. He did not misstep here. Much in the same way that AOC and the squad would not have misstepped were they to force this exact conflict when we asked them to. And it wouldn't have been that they wouldn't have caused some short-term harm to the party. It's that you have to cause, relational harm. It's that you have to cause some short-term harm to the party in order to steer it long-term where you think it must go. Matt Gaetz was not afraid of being perceived as helping the Democrats here, because in a certain sense, he was helping the Democrats. The Democrats did vote with him to get rid of McCarthy. The Democrats do like the fact that the Republicans are having this chaotic moment now. I'm sure betting odds went slightly down for Republicans in 2024 because of this. Because, look, every ounce of energy that you spend trying to get your own house in order is an ounce of energy you can't spend attacking the Democrats. And even guys like Dan Bongino said, okay, yeah, we didn't like McCarthy, but the fact that all the Marxist socialist Democrats voted with Gaetz, that means that he kind of screwed up? No? Like, am I missing something? No, you're not missing something. You're not missing something. Sometimes you have to hamstring the party in the short term in order to force a directional change. Now, the people who are now look back, like the Sam Cedars and, like some of these other, quote unquote left commentators, well, look at how Matt Gaetz fucked up here because look at the disarray that the Republicans are in. They handed a victory to the Democrats. Well, you just gave away the game. You just showed your ass, because if you're worried about giving a win to the opposition party in the short term, it means all of this Bernie stuff was just all a virtue signal. You weren't really serious about any of it, because in order to actually turn the Democrats into something worthwhile, you would have to upset their apple cart in a
Right.
way that, of course,
Right.
would cause some short-term inconvenience or some short-term losses. It was not going to be pretty. It wasn't supposed to be pretty. That's why the hashtag was force the vote, not request the vote, right?
Right.
Force the vote. You have to force the issue, which, yes,
Right.
comes with some short-term harm, some growing pains, if you will. But these people were never willing to put up with that because they're so neurotic about, well, we can't. What if we did that? Then that would help the Republicans. Well, if you're worried about the Republicans getting a momentary bounce or a momentary boost of momentum, then you were never serious about hijacking the Democratic Party to begin with. Matt Gaetz is serious about hijacking the Republican Party, so serious that he's willing to harm their prospects in the short term because he understands that as a necessary part of the process. He's not coming at this from a naked partisan perspective. If he were, he would be repulsed by the idea that the Democrats voted with him, and he never would have done it. You have to think in a way that transcends even the next election, really. Even the next election. In this case, they're over a year out, so he can kind of afford to do this now, and it's likely that, things will reset more or less by the time we vote next year. But you have to, of course, there's risk. That's the bottom line. Yes, he's taking a chance. He's taking a chance because he feels it necessary to take a risk, to reorient the party, because he sees the Republican Party as useless in its current form, just as we saw the Democratic Party as useless in its current form. Sending the squad there was a desperate effort to reshape it in a way that made it viable for some sort of positive change, and they were not willing to do it. They were not willing to put anything on the line to make that happen. They wanted it. Some commentators wanted it for free. Well, if you, suck up to Nancy Pelosi, call her mama bear, be nice, they'll give you some committee assignments. I mean, come on. Gavin Newsom wouldn't even give Barbara Lee the Senate seat. He put a fucking lobbyist there, okay, to keep her out. We're going to get to that later, too. Anyway, go ahead. I know I said a lot.
That's an excellent point, that if your critique of what McCarthy is doing now is that he's hurting his party, then you were never
You
really...
mean Gaetz. You mean Gaetz.
Yeah, Gaetz. What did I say?
You said McCarthy.
Oh, yeah. Gaetz.
Yeah, you meant Gaetz.
Yeah, you were never serious about reforming the Democrats because clearly you were going to have to burn that party down and remake it from the ground up. Now, one thing I will point out is it is easier for guys like Gaetz to take stands like this because in the end, the people with the money don't really give a shit about the Republican internecine fighting. Whereas if you look at what we sent the squad there to do, now you got the whole system coming down on you, right? I mean, now you've got all the corporations, all of their lobbyists, all of the media that's owned by those same corporations. They're all going to come down on you because you're talking about reordering the whole economic system. You're talking about reordering the whole distribution of wealth. And not even, in terms of the squad, in terms of the Bernie agenda. You're not even talking about like a communist reorganization. You're talking about a Nordic model kind of reorganization. But these people are so fucking greedy. Even that is anathema. So Gaetz can do this without facing what the squad would have. That is something we have to concede. But nonetheless, the idea that the Republicans are going to suffer terrible consequences from who? From who? If you think back, remember when AOC stood for something? She was popular. She was actually popular, if you remember, early on, when she was giving interviews and talking about unfair wages and corporate power. She actually had positive poll numbers. Now, because the people who were for her have disowned her, and the Fox News people were always brainwashed against her. Now she's deeply unpopular. If the squad had taken those kinds of stands and followed through with them, they would have won a lot of support from independents. They would have won a lot of support from MAGA people. Now they've just fallen back on standard Democratic Party cultural signaling with, vague platitudes about economics. Their base now are just suburban libs.
Right.
I remember the libs I knew hated AOC.
Oh,
They
yeah.
love her now.
Mhm.
They love
Yep.
her now. Now she's one of them. So who is taking we need to stop funding Ukraine stance? Who is that going to hurt Gaetz with? Who's that going to hurt Gaetz with? Because what you can see from the fact that AOC, when she actually seemed to stand for something, was popular, the American people on the whole respect it when you stand for something, when you actually stand on a principle. They are much more likely to get behind you if they think that you actually have some kind of balls. Hey, that's part of the appeal of Donald Trump. That is part of his popularity. He's perceived that way. He's perceived as a guy who will take on the system and not go along with what they're told to do. There's no real downside for that. And something that really is interesting about all this, well, if they fucking removed a House Speaker, partly on Ukraine funding, absolutely refused to fund Ukraine, and part of the critique was he was scheming with the Democrats to fund Ukraine. What makes you think there's going to be any more funding for Ukraine? They removed a speaker, right? Like, they're never going to allow Ukraine funding to go through, right? Like, this isn't being out enough. Like, isn't this the end of Ukraine funding?
No, because I think the Democrats will vote to keep someone if they give them the Ukraine funding. This is what made the McCarthy thing so stupid, is that he jumped over the Freedom Caucus, right? Which meant he burned his bridge with them. But he jumped over the Freedom Caucus's head to make a deal with the Democrats, but he left out the most important thing to the Democrats, which is the Ukraine aid. So he really cut his coalition off on both ends, because he burnt the Freedom Caucus people by working with the Dems, but he also burnt the Dems by screwing them on Ukraine. I think whichever speaker gives you Ukraine aid will probably have Democratic support, to the point where those 8 Freedom Caucus holdouts might get screwed. But then they have another problem on their hands, which is now they are literally rhinos in the eyes of the base.
Yeah, you're assuming that the next speaker is elected by the Democrats, and I don't think that's going to be the case. I think that's too complicated for the Democrats in terms of optics. Like,
it's going to become very
the
difficult.
Next speaker.
That's
so. I am assuming that what's going to happen is the Republicans are going to agree on somebody, and whoever they agree on is not going to fund Ukraine. So it is, for the foreseeable future, the end of funding for this war, which gets really interesting really fast.
Well, the other problem you also have is in the Senate, where Rand Paul said that he would block any bill that had funding for Ukraine in it. So if McCarthy put the funding in, Paul would have probably blocked it in the Senate. I still think it would have been to McCarthy's advantage to do that, just politically, because that becomes McConnell's headache and not his, right? But it's still, like, nonetheless, that's another obstacle.
Right. But when you look at all that, isn't that the end of the United States funding the war in Ukraine? That's what I'm saying. That's a very big deal. What happens? Do the Europeans step up? Do they start paying for it?
They're already saying they're out. What was the country that said we're out of weapons? Like, we have no more to send? One of the countries, I forget which one. I
didn't hear that.
They said, yeah, we don't have any more. So, yeah. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how that shakes out, for sure. There's another angle to this whole McCarthy ouster episode that just happened, and that is, of course, the media angle. So, Matt Gaetz obviously put himself out there by making this happen. He has gotten all the press for it. Good press from his base, good press from people like us who are not his base, but nonetheless admire what he did and wish that people on quote unquote our side would have done this 2 years ago. But here's a case study in why they didn't, or at least part of why they didn't. Look at the media reaction to Matt Gaetz, and then we're going to look at a segment on MSNBC praising the squad for not having done this themselves. So here is lifelong Republican, partisan, down the middle, Newt Gingrich, really giving it to him, expressing his displeasure that the Republican Party is now fractured for what he considers to be no good reason, going as far as to call these 8 Freedom Caucus detractors traitors. So here's Newt Gingrich on Fox News.
96% of the Republicans voted for McCarthy. 4% voted against him. From my position as a longtime Republican activist, they're traitors. All 8 of them should, in fact, be primaried. They should all be driven out of public life. What they did was to go to the other team to cause total chaos. We ought to be focusing on Biden. We ought to be focusing on the economy. We ought to be focusing on the border. Instead, you're going to get a week or 10 days of the media focusing on Republican disarray. It's an astonishingly destructive behavior by a handful of egocentric people who think they're superior to 96% of the conference.
Now, had AOC and the squad forced the vote 2 years ago, people like Joe Scarborough, David Axelrod, James Carville would have been talking about them the same way that Gingrich just talked about Matt Gaetz. Instead, they kept in line, and now here's the kind of coverage they're getting on MSNBC as all of this goes down.
I think Sahil had the tweet of the day,
Gingrich
actually.
was the Gaetz of his time.
Well, that's true, yes, the Gingrich Revolution. That's what they called it in 94.
I think Sahil had the tweet of the day, actually, where he tweeted and he underscored that Speaker Nancy Pelosi, when she was Speaker, had the exact same very slim margin that Kevin McCarthy did. And for all the hemming and hawing that a number of progressives did do privately, nothing like this ever happened while she was Speaker of the House.
And can one make, we hear all the time the far right and the far left, but even the most progressive members of Congress, Simone, you can't point to anything that they're simply trying to blow up the system, cause chaos, bedlam, or paralysis, which is exactly where the House is right now.
See, there's the difference. There's the difference. The progressives get praised by the corporate left media for not wanting to blow up the system, for being reasonable. Whereas had they done what Gaetz did, they would have gotten the treatment that Gingrich just gave Gaetz. Here's Jonathan Capehart tweeting out, reminder, Nancy Pelosi also had a 4-seat majority during her second stint as Speaker of the House. I don't know why he put quotes in second, but anyway, second stint as Speaker of the House. So, ... and then the picture of Nancy Pelosi looking all cool. Why? Because she was able to keep her caucus unified, right? Because she was able to tame the progressives in her caucus. Brianna Joy Gray caught on to the subtext of what he was saying there, which is that the centrists, yes, are bragging that progressives never seriously considered using their leverage to extract a single thing from Nancy Pelosi that would materially benefit poor and working people during a pandemic when 15 million people just lost their health insurance. So there you have it. There you have it. That's a big part of why we didn't get forced to vote, because the progressives did not have it in them to take that incoming from the media. Whereas you can see, obviously, Matt Gaetz revels in it. He goes on Laura Ingram's show and he shoves it right back up Kevin McCarthy's ass. Well, I'm in talks with President Trump. I might go campaign with him. You know who's not going to be seen campaigning with President Trump? Kevin McCarthy, because he'd get booed off the stage. There's a huge difference there in the way there's just a huge difference there in the way progressives and conservatives view the media, right? That was the whole thing when Donald Trump kept referring to the media as the enemy of the people in 2020 or 20. I forget when he said that. Yeah, that was this last cycle. Chuck Todd asked Bernie, well, you don't think we're enemies of the people, do you? Oh, no, right? Even the progressives had this very hands-off approach to the media. They are not willing to attack the media. They don't want to get on the bad side of the media. Whereas conservatives, and this goes back decades, they relish in it, right? They get rewarded for it. That's a huge difference.
You're all worthless and weak.
That's my bottom line on they're just they're useless. I mean, that's honestly that's what I think when I look at Democrats, when I look at the media. They're all worthless and weak. Worthless and weak. The idea that you would brag, that you would show this fucking rich San Francisco political dynasty aristocrat, or fucking God knows how much that fucking outfit costs, more than her constituents make in a fucking year. Like, this is something to brag about. She kept her caucus together. Well, that's easy when your caucus is worthless and weak.
Right.
That's easy when you've got a caucus that's going to call you Mama Bear to fucking impress Whoopi fucking Goldberg of all people. Like, who gives a shit? You got to solicit her fucking approval. That is worthless and weak. You are fucking worthless and weak. They're all worthless and weak. That's their basic support for, and we don't know what's in their hearts, but it seems like a lot of them are true believers in themselves as defenders of these institutions. Well, if the institution comes first and the institution's interests are openly hostile to the interests of the American people, well, guess what you are? You're an enemy of the American people. And that's why so much of what they do, so much of their decision making, when you sit down and you look at it, they're enemies of the people. And they will tell you, we want this, but oh, darn it, it's the parliamentarian. Oh, darn it, it's the Republicans. You got to vote harder. You got to elect more of us. Oh, it's Manchin. Oh, it's Sinema. No, it's them. They are worthless and weak, and they have no interest in actually doing anything for their constituents. That is why they push so hard on identity politics, because it's the only way they can cover up the fact that they are not there to do anything other than to further their careers and run interference for their wealthy donors. And now you're watching this bizarre spectacle of the theoretically pro-corporate party burning a lot of powerful interests. I'm sure the defense contractors are not happy with the stance that they're taking. But if you have to vote for one or the other of these parties, and we're not planning on doing either, but yeah, I mean, at this point, for me, World War III and free speech are kind of trump every other issue. Like, if you're going to vote for one or the other based on those issues, you have to vote for the party of Matt Gaetz, don't you? I mean, make an argument for me to the contrary. I want to hear it.
Yeah, very difficult. Very difficult. As Marjorie Taylor Greene said when she posed for the photo with the code pink, free speech, anti-war politics, and peace and free speech should not be partisan issues. Excuse me.
But they are.
They certainly are. They certainly are. All right, let's take some super chats here, and then we got a couple more segments to do before the end of the evening. Virtuoso, thanks for the $4.99. Politico downplaying the Waffen SS like it's just a tribute band of the Nazis. Yes, indeed. Good one, sir. Thank you for the donation. Christian Fierro, Glenn is in Brazil. Yes, you should escape to the south, bro. Yes. No, it looks lovely down in Brazil. And thank you for the other donation there. Thank you for those pesos. Appreciate that. By the way, folks, hit that like button. I don't know where we're at on likes, but hit that subscribe button. If you're over on Rumble, hit that follow button, please. DC, thanks for the $5. Adidas, Puma, Fanta, and many other beloved Nazi brands had successful rebrands. Talk about a comeback against all odds. A feel-good story. Yes, for the yes, indeed. Baza, thanks to the $5. Boats and cars use port and starboard because left and right is relative to perspective. Interesting. Thus, I have no longer left, but I'm somewhat portly. Okay, good one. I like that. See, funny. See, we have a very clever chat. People call you depraved and delusional, but very, very clever. What does this translate to, Russell? Do you know? From DC? Russell's having a hard time reading it.
I mean, it's all, but I don't know what Clar is.
I don't know what Clar is.
And Herr Commissar, Mr.
Yeah, but what's Clark? Yeah, interesting.
Clark.
Thank you, DC. Appreciate it. Look at Glenn's bid on Jordan, Russ. He's a lizard. From Kid Ulysses. Glenn's bid on Jordan.
Does he goes full David Icke's on Jordan in an episode? I hadn't heard about that.
I don't know. Yeah. Franklin Worsham, thanks for the $4.99. All the Dems have is a truckload of absentee. Oh yeah. Oh, caught yourself in the middle of the night when no one is looking. I think you're allowed to say that on YouTube now, Franklin. You don't have to censor that anymore. But thanks for thinking of us. And thanks for the donation. Derek, thanks for the $5. At this point, the Democratic Party is the right-wing party in the U.S. In many ways, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That's what we were just talking about. DC says you can't be fiscally conservative and pro-war. Well, that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. And that's a big part of where Gaetz is coming from. You know, we talked a little bit about this on the last show. When we played a little bit of his CNN appearance on the Jake Tapper show, we didn't play this part of it, but this is a very interesting part that Russell brought up, you know. To be running up these kinds of debts as the world moves away from the dollar does seem to be a problem worth talking about, right? I mean, we've never been deficit hawks here, but the thing is, what undergirds our economy is the assumption that the dollar will always be the world's reserve currency. And so as this massive de-dollarization campaign is underway, those become questions that I would imagine you'd have to take a little bit more seriously. I mean, I don't know. I'm not an economist, but this is a point that Russell raised last time.
Yeah, look, I know that this is one of these things. It's like a hot button issue, like Jordan Peterson and Breonna Joy Gray. Whenever you bring this up, you get people get very exercised about it. Yeah, look, we'll read the book, and I don't buy fucking MMT. I don't buy it. I know too much history to buy it. Honestly, that's why I don't buy it. It's if you look historically at countries that start printing money in order to meet their debts, which tends to accompany military overextension and financialization of the economy, moving away from the original sources of its power and wealth, which are usually based in manufacturing and some form of energy production and mastery of an energy source. As you move into this kind of look, that's the world that like A Christmas Carol is describing. What is Ebenezer Scrooge? He's a hedge fund guy, right? I mean, he's a version. That's what England had started to become by that time, right? From being this manufacturing power. That's where we're at, and it always debases the currency when you just start printing your way out of debt that way. And when you look at the fact that we're running these deficits based on selling treasury bills, I was just reading, I think China cut back 17% on its purchases of treasuries. And listen, I respect the Chinese people. They think long term by definition. I mean, that's kind of ingrained in their culture. If there is a people that would eventually be waiting for the right moment to just pull the plug and stop buying treasuries, that would think that long term, like let's get them completely dependent on our capital inflow and then just cut it off at the right moment, it would be China. China has that kind of long-term thinking in its politics and in its traditional approach to foreign affairs. So that's just one example. Like the idea that a country can't go bankrupt that controls its own currency, it's fucking bullshit, man. There's no example of this in the history of the world that you can just print money and hey, it's okay. It all works out. It's all magic. It's all smoke and mirrors. I don't buy it. So what Gaetz is talking about, it's valid, man. It's valid. These countries aren't moving to de-dollarize for no reason. Right? It's very inconvenient for them because there is no apparent successor currency. Why do you think they're doing that?
Well, yeah,
because
of course.
It's not
There's a risk there.
Fact.
I still have Stephanie Kelton's book out from the library.
Yeah, look, man, I'll read it, but I'm just saying, I know shit from Shinola, man. And I'm sure there are going to be a lot of very interesting mathematical arguments. You know, you can spin a lot of really convincing bullshit if you're smart enough, and you might actually believe it yourself. But I'm going to look at the history of the world, and I'm going to look at what happened every time a country tried to print its way out of debt and financial obligations. And there is no case where the theories that underlie MMT reflected the way that played out. Now, if MMT is true, why would that be the case? Why did all these countries wind up with a debased currency and bankruptcy? If
I hope
MMT
it's
is true, what, did it just become true? Why wasn't it true then? It's true now. Why? It's bullshit.
I mean, I certainly hope it's true because I've had that book out for a couple of months. I'm gonna need to print my own money to pay the late fees off. So I hope she's on to something because I probably owe a lot of money on that book. So
you better resell it now while the currency is still
I haven't even got a chance to read it. Those of you who watch the show a lot know that, you know, my life's been a little crazy this past couple months, but I will get to it. And if I have to print my own money to pay the late fee back, hopefully the library will be cool about it. Realigning party coalitions.
I think it's illegal when we do it.
I think so. That's probably right. Maybe I can convince them. Realigning party coalitions, consideration and reminder for 2022 midterms. Liz Cheney endorsed Democrats. Tulsi Gabbard endorsed Republicans. Thanks, Cool Blue. Appreciate the $4.99. Tulsi would be a very interesting running mate for RFK when he goes independent. That would be a killer ticket. Yeah,
she would be.
DC, thanks for the $2. Yesterday's rally outside of public view, echo chamber. You're talking about what rally? Oh, the Cornell rally in where was that? Was that in New York or DC? I know he was doing something at Riverside Church. I forget. I'm assuming that's what you're talking about. Forgive me.
I actually have to work that day. Like, I would go to the Philly thing
on October 9th. Yeah, I might go. We'll see what's going on. There's a couple of question marks here, as there always are, but I'll see. But yeah, I might go just to get some footage. Chris, thank you, Chris Bishop, for the $5. I'm in Austin now. If you come to Texas for the Republican primary, I'll treat you to some good Texas barbecue. Well, Chris Bishop sweetening the deal.
All right.
I love Austin, Texas. That's one of my favorite towns, but I have not been since the Silicon Valley douchebags took it over. Last time I was in Austin was 2007. That was back when it was still this, very affordable, sort of bohemian Mecca. And I know people who have lived in Austin since the 70s would tell you, well, it sucked then too. It wasn't then what it was, but it was not what it is now. Now it's expensive. We stayed, my friend and I got a Motel 6 like 3 blocks from the UT campus because we were there doing a video project. $36 a night for the two of us, $18 a person. Yeah. So and it was amazing. I love Austin. So thank you for the offer, Chris. Maybe I'll have to come down.
It's gotten a lot more expensive since then, I think.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, hugely more expensive now. Now it's like, because a lot of Silicon Valley douchebags moved down there. It got a big tech takeover. Thanks for the $5, Derek. What are the chances that McCarthy's replacement makes a deal with Dems to not investigate, impeach Biden in exchange for their votes? Look, it's possible, but the problem is whoever it makes that job, and this is another thing we talked about last time, it makes that job just utterly thankless. Like, if the Democrats control who becomes speaker, then no Republican's going to want that job because whoever has that job is just going to be at the brunt of constant attacks and attempts at removal. That's why, I don't think Gaetz and his caucus are going to let up, right? They're talking about Jim Jordan. But that's a smart pick because I think Jim Jordan could probably unify the caucus behind him. And whoever can unify the caucus behind him doesn't need the Democrats. Right? Like, yes, McCarthy's problem is that he couldn't unify the caucus, right? The Democrats only become a factor if whoever the Republicans nominate does not meet the standards of Matt Gaetz and the Freedom Caucus, which is why, once again, the force the vote strategy was so good. right? Because, it's not that you are relying on the other party. You rely on the other party in an instance where you have to get rid of someone you don't like. But now they're vetting someone. Hey, as long as we're cool with you and we get the other Republicans on board, then the Democrats are not a factor anymore. And I think Jordan could be the one. He could be the one because he's not offensive to most of the party. They like him. He seems popular enough.
I am honestly surprised anyone wants the job.
Yeah, me too.
Like that's the worst job in Washington at this point.
Yeah.
Like to be the speaker for the Republicans. But yeah, I mean, Jordan and Scalise, the Trump wild card would be fucking hilarious. Apparently Trump tweeted out a photoshopped picture of himself as speaker.
Oh, he did? I didn't see that. We should have pulled that up. Maybe we'll do that on Friday. DC, thanks for the $2. Vermin loves Supreme for Speaker of the House. Yeah, he can get something going for sure. Lars and Rune, thanks for the $5. Control speech, control information, control minds. Absolutely. Mason Stone, here's some money. Please forward it on to Matt Gaetz for me. Thanks, boys. Yeah, Russell, this is not to be used for your coffee addiction. All right, earmarked. We'll get that donation. We'll pass that along. We'll say it's from Mason. OD, thanks for the $10. Gaetz squad ally Congressman Burchett, Republican from Tennessee, called the Pentagon war pimps while calling for a Pentagon audit on Fox News. Wow. Could you imagine Sunscreen Sandy uttering such words? No, I cannot. That's amazing. I'll have to look that up. Maybe we'll talk about that on Friday. That's crazy. But thank you for the donation. Do a couple more of these, then we'll move on. Derek, thanks for the $5. Did you catch the clip retweeted by Nico with Ilhan Omar lustily eyeing Gaetz and licking her lips during this? I did, where she was kind of giving him, and then she actually tweeted that out. She actually took the bait. She tweeted that out, calling them perverts or something like that, which that only gives it more oxygen. She should have just ignored it.
I said it before. They gave her a frontal lobotomy.
Yeah.
She is not the same person. They grabbed her in the Senate cloakroom with an ice pick.
Yeah.
She is not the same person.
Job.
Yeah. Years ago. Exactly. We're gonna have to start calling her Ilhan McMurphy.
Yeah, McMurphy. Ilhan McMurphy would be good. Rando Carlisian, thanks for the $4.99. Gaetz is your political model. You really want squad members going full Gaetz. Your ilk would sell AOC out in a heartbeat if they didn't do door proud. Well, yeah. Gaetz is our political model in that sense, sure. You really want the squad members going full Gaetz, sure. Yes. Your ilk would sell out AOC in a heartbeat if they didn't do door proud. Well, I don't know what you mean by sell her out. What do you mean by sell her out? We wouldn't sell her out. We just opposed to, we didn't appreciate that she wouldn't follow through with what was obviously a strategy in keeping with what she was sent there to do. We didn't sell her out. We didn't get anything out of it.
If they had done force the vote and they had held the line on the infrastructure bill, we'd be in a different world. As I said earlier, we would probably have a show where we're fundraising for them, where we're encouraging people to donate, where we're showing links to their donation pages. It would be a completely different world. Selling them out, nobody would be supporting them more than we would be if they had done that. And I think I can safely speak for the cadre that you're referring to. We'd all be behind them, but that's not who they turned out to be.
Of course. And selling them out implies that we would have betrayed them after they had done well. You know what I
mean? Why would we do it? Right. Come on, man. Fucking stop drinking.
Pickle the Pirate, thanks for the $5. Want to switch to Rumble, but MFers want my phone number just to be able to chat? What the fuck? They want to compete with YouTube or not? I don't have to give Rumble my phone number. Do you guys give Rumble your phone number? I don't know. Maybe Peter Thiel has a crush on you or something. But I don't think I had to give my phone number. I don't remember that. Odd. We got a Rumble rant that just came in. We will take more Rumble rants and super chats in a little while. But let's move on here. We have two more segments before the end of the night. Gavin Newsom has been making a lot of news lately. He has been in the news quite a bit. There's obviously speculation about him swapping out or him being swapped in for Joe Biden if Biden is not able to run. Because of that, he's been on a veto spree where he's been sort of trying to angle for national positioning by, making himself come across a little less California, maybe a little more Ohio, although not all of his decisions really make sense in that respect. But, of course, Dianne Feinstein died last week, and that left her Senate seat open right now. It was open in the sense that Feinstein was obviously not seeking re-election, and so there's a Senate primary underway. The three most noteworthy candidates there. The three most noteworthy candidates in that primary are Katie Porter, Adam Schiff, who has the blessing of the party leadership, and Barbara Lee, progressive black woman Barbara Lee. Now, the fact that she's a black woman is significant because Gavin Newsom promised to appoint a black woman to the Senate should Feinstein not be able to finish her term. And so, conventional wisdom was such that if Feinstein does not finish her term and Newsom has to appoint a replacement, being that Barbara Lee obviously wants the job, why not give it to her? Well, what did Tucker Carlson say last week that we actually covered on Sunday? He said, these elites are 2-3 steps ahead of you, right? Don't ever think you can predict what they're going to do, because turns out Gavin Newsom chose none of those three candidates, even though he promised to pick a black woman. Instead, he picked a black woman named Laphonza Butler to fill Dianne Feinstein's Senate seat. Butler is the head of the group Emily's List, which works to elect Democratic women. She will be the third black woman in history to serve in the Senate. She's also a lesbian, so he gets extra points for that, I guess. This is from This is from NBC News. California Governor Gavin Newsom has chosen Laphonza Butler, the president of Emily's List, to fill the seat of the late Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein. The governor's office confirmed to NBC News. She will be the third black woman ever to serve in the Senate, as well as the first openly LGBTQ person to represent California in the chamber. Politico first reported Newsom's choice of Butler. Feinstein obviously died Thursday at age 90. Butler has led Emily's List, which works to elect Democratic women who support abortion rights, since 2021, when she became the first black woman to lead the organization. On Friday, she posted a tribute to Feinstein on social media, calling her a titan in the Senate and a legendary figure for women in politics around the country. Now, who is this person? Well, Feinstein's successor consulted for Uber and Airbnb. This is Politico's Influence Watch sort of newsletter.
Okay, Feinstein died. We need someone worse than Feinstein, but black.
Right, exactly.
Somebody.
Right. Right. Is there a black woman to the right of Dianne Feinstein who we can put in here? And California's a big state, so you got a lot of options, so your odds are pretty good. And he found one. California Governor Gavin Newsom's appointment of Emily's List President Laphonza Butler to fill the Senate seat left vacant by Dianne Feinstein elevates a seasoned political player and a successful fundraiser, of course, to the highly sought-after post. But PI, Politico Influence, that's the publication, is diving into Butler's past in the corporate influence world, first as a consultant at the California firm SCRB Strategies, and then with Airbnb's government affairs team. SCRB Strategies is well known for its roster of political clients. Vice President Kamala Harris, or PACs affiliated with her firm, with the firm, paid more than $1.4 million over the course of Harris's campaigns for Senate and President, according to campaign finance disclosures. Additional clients have included Newsom himself, former California Governor Jerry Brown, the DCCC, and Harris's Senate successor, Alex Padilla. But it's Butler's corporate consulting work that has drawn attention from government watchdogs. SCRB Strategies was paid $185,000 from 2019 through 2020 for work for Uber, California's lobbying records show. At the time, Uber and other gig companies were in the midst of a clash with labor groups and California Democrats over a bill that would have allowed gig workers to be classified as employees with the right to benefits rather than independent contractors. Bloomberg reported in 2019 that Butler, a labor organizer who spent more than a decade as a top leader in the SEIU's California chapter, had been advising Uber and acting as a liaison in its dealings with unions, while the gig worker bill, one of labor's top priorities, was working its way through the legislature. Butler's past work for Uber is prompting concerns from one watchdog group in the present day. Quote, "This is a connection that is not just aesthetically unpleasing, it is substantively relevant to how Butler will carry on her role as senator, and big tech is one of the few potential bipartisan areas of agreement," said Jeff Hauser, head of the Revolving Door Project, pointing to antitrust legislation stymied last Congress in part by Democrats with ties to tech giants. Unfortunately, I think Butler has some of the same flaws that characterize not only Newsom, but Zoe Lofgren and Lou Correa and many other California Democrats, which is they think the interests of big tech are the interests of Californians or Americans more generally. He told PI, no, they don't think that the interests of big tech are the interests of Californians and more Americans. They work for big tech, so they're trying to stack the deck in the favor of big tech. Right. And I think that her work against Uber drivers is evidence of that. Almost done here. Butler also parlayed her organizing background into helping Airbnb navigate political dynamics. In her various roles over the years, Laphonza has successfully managed the politics with electeds in California with members of Congress and with the administration, says Oscar Ramirez, a founder at Fulcrum Public Affairs and one of Airbnb's outside lobbyists. Knowing how to work with the right people in the right way is part of what she did very well. Okay, so this is all a long way of saying he apparently just appointed a lobbyist. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like she's basically... A lobbyist. Right. And, you know, the wisdom of doing that.
I mean, she's just got the job title.
What's that? Go ahead. I didn't hear.
They're all lobbyists. She's just got the title.
Well, she's got the title and she has the official gig. And that's important. That actually made it a smart call because he doesn't have to worry about Laphonza Butler actually seeking an elected term. Like, she's a career money bundler. Right? I mean, her world is that world. She probably doesn't really want to serve in the Senate for an extended period of time, which made her a smart pick from Newsom's standpoint, because he doesn't now have to worry about Adam Schiff not being the next senator from the state, because she will bow out. Like, he picked a lackey. He picked a Democratic Party crony. Like the most vulgar example of that, like the most obvious example of someone who was just bundling money for Democrats and in turn taking orders from Democrats. Oh, you need me to fill in for a year while this primary is going on until the next election? Sure, no problem. Then I'll go back to my cushy gig, right? He doesn't have to worry about her wanting to stick around because the fear here, and this is why we thought at least Nancy Pelosi was so adamant that Dianne Feinstein was fit to serve and good to go. They wanted Feinstein to stay in that seat because they didn't want to force Newsom into a spot where he would have to appoint someone who's not Adam Schiff, because if he appoints someone, they become the incumbent. If they then seek an elected term, it becomes very difficult to unseat them. It's very hard to beat an incumbent.
Right.
Of course, again, he's 3 steps ahead. He just said, well, we'll give this lobbyist a gig for a year and then she'll go away because that's what she always does. She does what we want. We give her what she needs. Revolving door, as was mentioned there.
Yeah, well, I think part of what's happening here also is Pelosi and the Democratic leadership really want Adam Schiff.
Yes, of course. They're all in for him, yeah.
If he appoints Barbara Lee, he's crossing those people. And that's not a good move for a guy who wants their support if Biden stumbles or for 2028. So this was the way he got to dodge it and at the same time maintain his liberal bona fides by appointing a gay black woman. right? So he's got all his bases covered. Look at my progressive choice that won't piss anybody off, and I'm not putting my thumb on the scale for anyone in this primary. I just went to a third party who, as you say, is not going to be competing against Barbara Lee and Adam Schiff. Like I say, reminds me of Bill Clinton. He's like no charisma Bill Clinton. That's a very Bill Clinton kind of a move. Well, I don't want to get the caucus angry with me, and I certainly don't want to put anybody in that office who has actual progressive values. Oh, I have a crony here in the closet. Let me put her in the position, have it all ways for all people. That's it, man. He's like Bill. It's Bill Clinton 2.0.
Yeah. No. Yes. Yeah. That is exactly the kind of move that he would make. And look, he weaseled his way out of it in a way that, we couldn't see coming. That's what Tucker Carlson said in that monologue last week. He says, you think it's going to be 2024, it's going to be Biden and Trump and maybe one of them will win. He says, no, these operatives are always 10 steps out in front of you, right? The assumption was, well, Feinstein better make it over the finish line. Otherwise, he's going to be forced to pick Barbara Lee. No, he pulls this name out of the deck no one's ever heard of. Right, this is a rich woman who's been a loyal foot soldier for the neoliberal wing of the Democratic Party. Good anti-labor bona fides there with the Uber, Airbnb. Obviously, their whole political battle has to do with the fact that they drive up the price of real estate, and she goes to bat for them. And so, it all worked out. And now it looks like Adam Schiff will probably win that race. And he'll become the senator, and she'll go back to her gig, and it'll all be happily ever after. Although I have to say, though, and I was actually surprised about this, the Congressional Black Caucus, far from a left-wing organization, actually was pressing Newsom to pick Lee. They actually wanted him to pick Barbara Lee, which I'm actually very surprised by that.
Interesting. Well, she's not left. She's just... they don't like anybody to the left of Francisco Franco in the Democratic Party.
Right, exactly.
So, she's too left for them.
Right.
That makes a good point. Anyone who still harbors any notion that the Democratic Party is reformable, look at this. Look at this, right? They're going to jump up and down anytime, a progressive white man is running. They're a white supremacist, they're racist, and they're going to find some corporate goon who fits an identity box, and they're gonna try to claim moral superiority by running that person. But if their goon is some white dude, they're all in on that white dude, right? So Adam Schiff versus Barbara Lee, in the end, they're going to go for the person who is their creature the most, right? None of that identity politics enters into it when the person who is most their creature is the white man, right? Running against the black woman, right. Fuck the black woman. She's a little left of Adam Schiff.
Right.
She's out. But at the same time, we have to, pretend. So we're going to appoint some corporate lobbyist, gay black woman for 10 minutes until the person we actually Adam Schiff gets in there. This whole shell game that they're doing here, that's the Democrats. That's why it's useless to try to work within that party.
Yeah, it's especially. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, we're still on a little time delay, folks. So sometimes when I think Russell's done, I cut in. But the other thing is, the most important point that I have to drive home, I do this all the time, is the average California Democrat will make Gavin Newsom pay no price for this. They do not think about it this way. It's Laphonza Butler. Oh, that's wonderful. Black LGBT woman, how nice. And then Adam Schiff, they love Adam Schiff out there. He held Trump accountable, whatever. I mean, it's absolutely hopeless. Axel Strife, member for 4 months. Thank you, my friend. He's been a supporter of ours for years. Axel's one of the OG dissidents.
Yeah.
This is the opening for Republicans to pivot to working class politics. It's a topsy-turvy when the Freedom Caucus is playing the left's playbook. Indeed. Good point. Henry Gustav, thanks for the $5. You guys need an MMT economist on. Russ, you need a macroecon education. All right. Well, like I said, I'm reading a book.
Okay.
I'll send Russell a textbook.
Listen, man, I could find you books from 100 years ago that make a great case for phrenology. It doesn't mean it was true.
No. Rando Carlos, you two have more in common with Gaetz than Ilhan Omar. Well, in some ways, that's certainly true.
Well, since you got
I would say that, certainly that is anatomically true.
Yeah.
Lucky for us.
Until somebody takes a nice pick to my frontal lobe, that will be true.
Derek, thanks for the $2. AOC sold herself out. Thank you, Derek. Why no Spaceballs sound bites? I was all right. Now this is going to be a divisive comment. I was never a fan of Spaceballs. It's not that it's not that I don't appreciate Mel Brooks, but I was just never a fan of that film.
All right, this is going to shock our entire audience. Gen X, we grew up with Star Wars, man. Like, you can't even imagine how popular Star Wars was if you're not that age with Gen X. There will probably never be anything like that again. I mean, I guess the Harry Potter series is kind of that for a certain generation. But I mean, everyone was obsessed with Star Wars, and I certainly was. I had no interest in Spaceballs to this day. I've never seen it.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. I am surprised because you're such a Star Wars guy. But
I didn't want to. I wasn't interested in it as a kid. I don't know why, because it's like something I would have been interested in. For some reason, I just didn't want to see it. And to this day, I never have.
Interesting. Yeah, I am surprised by that. Mount Dew Ramen. Thank you for the $5. MMT, what's that? A new sandwich? Love you guys. Thank you, Mount Dew Ramen. Appreciate that. Ruling class won't allow MMT, it says Justin Watson. Thank you for the $2. Man, we have to talk more shit about MMT. That really brings the super chats out. We've got to do that more often. Bazo,
I'm telling you, Jordan Peterson, there are certain subjects that people get very exercised.
Yeah, Peterson, absolutely. Let's do a Rumble rant. Mastriota, thanks you for the $1. The Democrat Party can't handle democracy, free speech, or anything that even delays handouts for the rich. We need extra Bulla 2024. Yeah, we got some Bulla supporters in the audience. Hey, maybe Bulla should be RFK's running mate. That'd be funny.
He should.
Go down there, pitch him. Shard 2419, thanks for the $1. On their MMT, these asshat deficit hawks on both sides would be exposed as idiots. On the federal level, taxes fund or pay for nothing. Yeah, see, a lot of MMT going on here. It's not printing money. You need to have Steve Grumbine on and check out therealprogressive.org. We should have Steve Grumbine. And if you guys would be nice to Steve Grumbine, I'll have him on. Because I know Grumbine is, I know he goes on with Jordan a lot. And so, if I could trust you guys in the chat not to, not to scare him away, maybe we could do that. You got to be nice.
List for me all the examples in history where this worked. Please, I'm dying to hear about it. I'd be very interested to see historical examples of this theory in practice.
Bring it on. All right. We got one more segment to do. I asked Tusker to be on call tonight in case I had to step out, which thankfully I don't have to. But I thought Tusker would be the absolute perfect guest for this next segment. And you will find out why. So we're going to admit her in just a second. But this, of course, we're talking about the new op-ed, the worst op-ed in history, perhaps. I mean, one of the worst op-eds ever written. It is the Politico Waffen-SS piece. But before we do that, it is time to make our October horror film recommendation. I went last time with Crawl as it pertained to the flooding. Now, of course, the theme here, Nazi exploitation, horror. So, Russell, do you want to talk about this film here?
All right. So this isn't exactly horror. It's more suspense, campy suspense. Ilsa She-Wolf of the SS. So there was an entire genre that ran concurrently with blaxploitation and women in prison. There was a whole Nazi exploitation genre in the debauched 70s. And none stood taller than Ilse She-Wolf of the SS. It was so successful that it actually spawned 3 sequels. Ilse, Harem Keeper of the Oil Sheiks, that kind of thing. You get the idea. So I recommend this because I think the guy who wrote this op-ed would probably really appreciate these films because he clearly has some kind of a Nazi fetish going on. These movies were really designed to play to people who, wanted to see shades of gray and maybe a little campy fun in the whole Nazi enterprise. Very, very, very similar to this op-ed. There are good Nazis in the Ilse universe. So I think we should get this guy's email and buy an online copy and send it to him.
Yeah, and indeed. All right. So, folks, for this next segment, we thought we really needed a communist to come on and do this next segment with us. So here's our resident communist, Tusker. What's going on, Tusker? Thank you for being here tonight.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No problem. I can't wait to tackle this atrocity.
Yeah, so the atrocity that we're talking about is a new piece in Politico Europe. Let me just set this up for those who don't know. Obviously, the Canadian Parliament made the mistake of honoring who they later found out was a volunteer for the Waffen SS who fought on behalf of the Nazis in World War II. They then apologized for it, but they apologized apparently a little bit too much for the tastes of the writer of this op-ed here. So fighting against the USSR didn't necessarily make you a Nazi, writes Politico. Canada's Hunka scandal is a demonstration of how, when history is complicated, it can be a gift to propagandists who exploit the appeal of simplicity. Wow. Everyone knows that a lie can make it halfway around the world before the truth has even got its boots on. And the ongoing turmoil over Canada's parliament recognizing former SS trooper Jaroslav Hunka highlights one of the most important reasons why. Something that's untrue but simple is far persuasive than a complicated, nuanced truth. A major problem for Western democracies trying to fight disinformation and propaganda by countering it with the truth, and one reason why fact-checking and debunking are only of limited use for doing so. In the case of Hunka, the mass outrage stems from his enlistment with one of the foreign legions of the Waffen SS, fighting so fucking crazy. In the case of Hunka, the mass outrage, this overreaction, stems from his enlistment with one of the foreign legions of the Waffen SS, fighting Soviet forces on Germany's Eastern Front. And it's a demonstration of how, when history is complicated, it can be a gift to propagandists who exploit the appeal of simplicity. This history is complicated because fighting against the USSR at the time didn't necessarily make you a Nazi, just someone who had an excruciating choice over which of these two terror regimes to resist. Now, that, to me, is the crux of the argument that he makes. I mean, I don't know how much of this we want to read. There's a little bit more we will read. But, I tweeted out, this is why we say liberals, when given the choice, will choose fascism over communism every time. I didn't come up with that phrase. That's been bandied about a lot in left-of-center circles. That's fairly famous. People say that all the time. I don't know where it came from, but it's obviously absolutely true because fascism does not threaten capital in the way that communism does. And so, of course, these PMC libs, at the end of the day, when the chips are down, they will always side with the fascists over the communists. Literally true in this example. Tusker, I have to toss to you for this. There's no other person we could toss to besides you for this. Go ahead.
You don't hear enough about the guards at Auschwitz who were not monsters, right? They had families. They had kids. For most of them, it was just a job. And you also don't
And many
hear
of
a
them
lot
were just
about,
following orders, and that excuse would
Yeah.
totally fly. Like, we were totally cool with that. That was a perfectly valid excuse in our eyes.
Yeah, and they would get a lot of valuable job skills at the camps. They don't talk about that
Yeah.
either. Some of them were musicians. They got to play in a band.
Russell,
You don't hear a lot about
you're
this
like,
side of it.
you were just trying to get my blood pressure up.
By the way, the genius who wrote this, his name is Keir Giles. I should have put that in the exhibit. Keir Giles is the writer.
Should go up so our viewers can tell them what they think about his article.
Yeah.
That would be nice. Okay. Well, yeah, sure. Everyone got job skills in the concentration camps, Russell, for sure. No.
The ones working for von Braun, they learned rocketry.
Right, head of NASA. That was ours.
Yeah.
All right. So the whole Canadian parliamentary thing, what this exposed, what essentially brought about this like Nazi apology article. This has been going on forever. They've apologized for Operation Gladio and said, "Oh, we learned our lesson." They've apologized for funding the Mujahideen, there are some people that apologize. It's still buried, but there's always someone that comes out and says, yeah, we kind of did that. That was a mistake. Then how do you keep making the same mistakes over and over again? These mistakes happened. The Second World War, it was actually before World War II was over. You had Alan Dulles. I think his brother was the State Department guy, but at the time he was trying to essentially elicit the surrender of the German army. He's the one that set up Richard Galen's intelligence network at the time that was incorporated with the OSS, which is the Operation of Strategic Services, which later became the CIA, Central Intelligence Agency. Galen was a part of that network. I've seen Scott Ritter talk about this. He knows the history a little bit better as far as the intelligence operations, but this has been going on ever since this is over. Ever since World War II was over. All of these people were exported. There were tons of them. Operation Paperclip. There were tons of them that went to Canada. There were tons of them that came to the United States. There were tons of them that went to South America and then participated in the brutal fascist colonial regimes down there in order so that our corporations could totally take advantage of every other nation.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay? So this is who they've always backed. The only reason why they allied with the Soviet Union is because the Soviet Union was winning. It was after the Battle of Stalingrad that we actually got involved. And it was the Battle of Stalingrad that turned the tides. That was what it was. And so once it was clear that Russia was winning or the Soviet Union was winning, that's when we decided to open up a front, throw in some soldiers, do whatever, because it was clear that you're going to have to let the Soviet Union essentially absorb and kind of give him a pat on the back and call Uncle Joe. That's what we used to call in the United States. That's what we used to call Joseph Stalin. We used to call him Uncle Joe. He was an ally and he was a friend, to us. There were pictures of him hanging in post offices right next to Uncle Sam. Okay. That's how close we were with the Soviet Union, but it was always a lie. The goal was to destroy the Soviet Union, which, essentially happened much to some of their own political bureaucracy and their own failings to uphold actual Marxist theory. And then the other part of it was, the geopolitical machinations of, the State Department and kind of what we call the deep state. That definitely happened. And guess what? We're still going after Russia. We want to weaken Russia. We want to overthrow Russia. It's the largest country in the world. It has a plethora of natural resources. They want to balkanize it. They want to get their hands on it. They want to cut it up into a bunch of multi-ethnic, tiny little states. You continue to have multiple Serbias, Yugoslavias, Kosovos, Croatias. You can have all these other types of things. You can split them into tiny little things. You can install your political puppets, and you can suck out the natural resources from Russia. That's what they want. That's what they want. It didn't matter. Honestly, to me, It seems like our ruling class has always wanted that landmass, and it doesn't really matter what political party was in charge there. Because they overthrew the communists. Well, they're still going after Russia. Why?
Let's read a little bit more of this because this gets even better, okay? So now we just get really into just now is when it gets just really just laughably dishonest, which we'll talk about in a second here. So there's that line there, it didn't necessarily make you a Nazi for fighting against Russia. You were basically choosing the lesser of two evils, right? It was an excruciating choice over which evil to resist. However, the idea that foreign volunteers and conscripts were being allocated to the Waffen-SS rather than the Wehrmacht or on administrative rather than ideological grounds is a hard sell for audiences conditioned to believe the SS's primary task was genocide and simple narratives. And I love this. Simple narratives like everybody in the SS was guilty of war crimes are more pervasive because they're much simpler to grasp. Now, I want to just skip the next paragraph here because we could read this whole thing be here all night.
Those simpletons with their simplistic narrative about Nazis being bad by definition.
Yeah, exactly. I love this. According to Russia's ambassador in Canada, Junka's unit committed multiple war crimes, including mass murder against the Russian people, ethnic Russians. This is a proven fact. But whenever a Russian official calls something a proven fact, it should set off alarms. Oh, really? Okay, so you see what they're doing there? Well, whenever a Russian tells you it's a proven fact, it should set off alarms. Even if they tell you something like the Waffen-SS were Nazi war criminals, take that with a grain of salt because it's coming from the Russians, right? Yeah.
I mean, the whole Holocaust thing, there are questions about whether it occurred.
Exactly. Yeah, it should set off alarms. We are satirizing their views. YouTube, those are not ours. Just so you know, for whatever robot is snooping around.
Don't come for us. We're the chosen people.
We happen to be Jews ourselves. Yes, we should lean heavily into that for this segment. Actually,
let me tell you, man. Going to all these museums, seeing all these statues. I have seen more uncircumcised dongs than I ever thought I'd see in my life. All that they're uncircumcised members, and very often they'll do like pubic hair. I took a specific picture of one where I don't know what was going on. They did like a star shape where the pubic hair was, like they just put like a star there. What was up with that? Like this person was like ahead of their time. They were like doing glam 2,000 years ago.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and if you put together a photography book and you try to publish it in America, it'll be banned in DeSantis's Florida.
Yeah, right. Now, this I want to get to because Russell actually caught this. Okay, so I'm going to pick this up in the middle of that last paragraph. And sure enough, here too, the facts were invented out of thin air, meaning that Junka's unit committed multiple war crimes. Repeated exhaustive investigations, including by not only the Nuremberg trials, but also the British, Canadian, and even Soviet authorities, led to the conclusion that no war crimes or atrocities had been committed by this particular unit. Now, if you notice, folks, some of the text here is in that sort of blue. Those are the hyperlinks within the article. I usually take those out when we're doing the exhibits, but I left these in because you see he linked on repeated exhaustive investigations. So basically he's linking to a source which supposedly confirms what he is alleging here, which is that this guy's particular unit did not commit war crimes. When you click that link to repeated exhaustive investigations, the following comes up. A link to, as you can see highlighted in the upper left-hand corner of that graphic, a 243-page document. That's what he links to supposedly corroborate his claim in the article that repeated exhaustive investigations say that this guy's unit didn't commit war crimes. Who the fuck is going to vet a 243-page source? Nobody, including, I suspect, him. I don't think he vetted it either.
Authored by the Canadian government, by the way, the same people that invited this guy onto the floor of Parliament. And I don't know if you grabbed what I sent you, but Taibbi, in his article about this, demonstrate, no, it's not just the Russians. The Polish investigated this, did their own report. And this unit, according to them, is responsible for basically wiping out a town where they killed 1,000 people in this town. And this town does not exist today. From what happened in World War II, it was never resettled. It's just abandoned, burned houses and a memorial. And this unit is blamed for that. So in refutation of that, he's offering you a 248-page report from the Canadians that nobody's going to read. And as Keaton says, when you dig into what scumbags like this do, you very quickly come to realize they're not above just lying. It is very unlikely that he read this, because if he did, he would have pulled the quote. He would have pulled the relevant quote. Notice he doesn't pull the relevant quote. No,
he just links you to a 243-page document.
Assuming you're not even going to follow the link, and if you do, you're not going to read this.
Right, exactly. I'm going to read one more slide here. This has a double print, so I'll skip down to the second paragraph. But this is just the latest twist in a long-running campaign by the Russian embassy in Ottawa, dating back even to Soviet times, when the USSR would leverage accusations of Nazi collaboration for political purposes as part of its active measures operations. This is my favorite part here. This is not my favorite part, but this is certainly up there. Yet it's not just enemies of democracy that are subscribing to the seductively simple. First of all, the level of, like, how fucking twisted is that? It's not just the enemies of democracy who are calling you out for lauding a Nazi in your parliament. It's not just the enemies of democracy that have a problem with that. Jewish advocacy groups in Canada have been understandably loud in their condemnation of Junca's recognition.
I mean, it's understandable. You know people. They get worked up very easily.
Exactly, yeah. But here, too, accusations risk being influenced more by misconception and supposition than history and evidence. So now you're actually going to tone police Jews for taking offense at this. The Friends of Simon Wiesenthal Center registered its outrage, noting that Junca's unit's crimes against humanity during the Holocaust are well documented, quote unquote, a statement that doesn't seem to have any more substance than the accusation by Russia. Well, as Russell just said,
which maybe knock this down.
Yes, it does. Right, exactly. So, look, I'm glad this went viral. I'm glad everybody is talking about this. These people need to just, and I'm not just talking about the people who write these articles, I'm talking about the people who swallow the line on Ukraine, have to just be shamed. Like, you have to communicate to these people that your arguments are invalid. Your opinions are illegitimate. These are people who have spent the last 8 years running around claiming that Donald Trump and the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys are this resurgence of Nazism here at home. And the dark comedy of this, that they are caught in a situation now where they are defending full-throatedly and arming as much as possible actual Nazis. And when they get caught doing it, they have thought leaders like this Keir Giles, whoever the fuck he is, write articles apologizing for it, defending it, saying, well, it's not so simple, right? If in Joe Rogan's case, it's simple, right? He Nazi. If you
Right.
you know physical why
He's
is
got-
the
he's got
alt-right
a
into physical fitness, right? Remember that article came out? I think it was like, I forget what outlet put that one. Why are the right wingers so into exercise? So if you lift weights, Nazi, right? If you Caitlin Johnstone put out a whole tweet thread
I was
about
gonna
this,
mention
all the different people who they call Nazis, but the actual Nazi who you feature in the halls of government, well, it's complicated, right?
Misunderstood, tragic figure that requires a whole lot of nuance. And definitely don't mention them bashing babies' heads into trees.
Right.
You know, definitely don't do that. It's whitewashing. That's what it is.
Yeah, I would say.
I mean, this is what these people always are. And just to kind of harken back to an earlier segment, there's a reason why people with my ideology call people like Bernie Sanders, call people like that instead of show solidarity to the poor and the working class all over the world and are staunchly anti-war in these situations. He is collaborating with the fascists in his country. He is choosing his own country's supremacy over the supremacy of humanity. Just generalized humanity. Doesn't matter what country you're from. Doesn't matter anything like that. The reason why we term them social fascists, they will always turn on everyone just to suit their own career goals, their own ideology, whatever it is. And that's what you have here with this author. I don't care about his name. I'm not going to try to even remember it. He is a class collaborator, and I can bet you if he was put in the same circumstances as some of those Waffen, he would have volunteered happily and committed those same. Okay.
Well,
So
yeah, that seems pretty obvious.
About him.
Well, look, I mean, I don't often say it. If I hadn't been busy with being here, yeah, I've never said this before, but I would like to use our platform to start an email campaign to get this guy fired. Like, gotta start somewhere.
Well, I don't think
right?
he's actually on staff. I think he's just a
these
contributor.
guys don't hesitate to go after people to try to get that. Let's try to get this guy canceled. Fuck him. Seriously, like we should start a campaign to email Politico to get this guy fired for writing such a horrifically offensive article. This little scumbag wouldn't hesitate to do that. Let's do it to one of them. Why don't we start a campaign to get this guy fired?
Sure. I mean, we can do that. I'm not totally against that. I wish more people would speak out. I wish that more people in the United States would actually look back at World War II. I mean, how many movies do we have that are like celebrating the heroism? You know, we all like Saving Private Ryan, all of the old war films, all of them. The Soviet Union they were our allies. Why does no one seem even interested in the United States or Canada for allying with the Soviet Union? Why are we rewriting history?
No, yeah, you watch American movies, you would think America won the war. There's absolutely no mention of the fact that in the end, the Soviets won World War II. And that is, I think most Americans are not even aware of that. They don't know anything about it because their movies on that part.
Yeah, no, they thought it was, Joe DiMaggio.
Even if they admit it, they go, Lend-Lease program. They scream Lend-Lease program. You know, no, the Lend-Lease program certainly helped. I'm not saying it didn't help, but that the massive aid in that really wasn't given out until like the situation was incredibly dire, and they gave them just enough to where they're like, oh yeah, here you go. They didn't give them as much aid as what they're giving Ukraine. They gave them scraps, to say they did. Whenever it increased, whenever that Lend-Lease aid increased, it was essentially after the Stalingrad thing, and that's really when they started pumping in the real money that actually, people talk about that was substantial. But before then, it was just crumbs.
Well, the Soviets lose 20 million They lost 20 million in the war?
27 million is the number that I have in my head, but I've also seen recent stuff that put the number like 31 to 34 million. And also the other thing that people forget about, in which country did World War II start? It was Japan invading China. China fought the longest war. They fought the longest front of the war. And they lost, I mean, I've seen like 20 million was the estimate, but then also studies have been done that they're now closer to the Soviet number of 27 million. And the Chinese were the ones that were primarily fighting the Japanese. So it was literally the Russians and the Chinese that won World War II.
That was the most, yeah, I mean, they had the most people on the line and they fought it for the longest. Right.
Well, we need to pitch this movie to Spielberg.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Exactly.
But also, Keaton, I mean, I know I've seen this meme plenty just because of like what I've seen. I know it's on one of yours. Do you think you could quickly find, just for your audience, so everyone can see in case I haven't seen the meme, where there's that little meme where you have like the general or whatever in the Nazi uniform, and then head of NASA or whatever it is, because if not, I can do the list.
Yeah, I hate to disappoint you, but I don't know what we're talking
I don't know.
Yeah. So just for everyone in the audience, here's a list of some of the Nazis that not Canada, the United States government brought to the United States or put in command in Europe. So you got Werner von Braun. He was the guy that did the missile program and all that other type of stuff. He became the head of NASA in the United States. You have Walter Hallstein. He was appointed as the head of the EU Commission once World War II was over. You've got Adolf Husinger, who eventually became a NATO chief of staff. You've got Kurt Waldheim. He became the Secretary General of the United Nations. You've got Hans Spiegel. He was the commander-in-chief of NATO in the EU. These are all Nazis.
Steve Jobs. You remember Steve Jobs? Not.
But anyway, it's just like
Waldheim, that actually became a little bit of a scandal at one point. He was like an Austrian politician, right? He was from Austria.
Something like that. I mean, like something like that. These were all known Nazi, like high up in the organization of the Nazi state, and we put them in charge of democracy in Europe, and whatever NATO is, the alliance that was supposed to be against the Soviet Union. So we were with the Soviet Union whenever we were beating the Nazis, and the second it was over, we said, "Oh, great, we need your help beating the Soviet Union," and we've loved them ever since.
All right, but look, I asked your comrade this at the rally in New York. The Nazis versus the Soviets, who had better uniforms.
And I've told you this offline, but I'll be happy to embarrass you in front of your audience. I have never said that the Nazi uniforms were not at least somewhat stylistic. And what I have told you is I've said it's entirely too bad for the Nazis that they spent more time on their uniforms and less time on their productive capabilities, because those fucking fancy uniforms got their asses kicked by a bunch of pores from the Soviet Union. If you tell me who has the better uniform, I think it's the one that won.
Go home and get your
we got to sample that rant and put it into the soundboard. That was awesome.
David Morrison, are you on the line here? I can't hear you. I'm having trouble hearing you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. What's up? Now you're muted again.
I don't know how to follow that. I don't know how to follow you, Tusker. I'll try.
I don't know. Just puff. I think puff, puff, pass. I think.
Yeah.
All right. Don't bogart the joint.
Why? I'm a collectivist.
What's that?
I said I'm a collectivist. I can't help it.
Very good. There you go. All right. What's the name of that author? Somebody Giles?
Keir Giles.
Okay, it sounds like the son on the new Frasier reboot or something. That's what it sounds
He's
like.
a Brit. I think he's a Brit. Keir. It's like
God.
a British name. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, just to add to that, it's amazing how many Jewish people I see in my feed who are actually kind of liking that and sharing that article.
When you talk about your feed, you're talking about Twitter.
Yeah,
Facebook?
my friends, my so-called friends, or people in that show up who I call friends, but I don't really talk to, and people I used to be involved with when I was with Bernie, and they kind of stayed with the DSA, and they're sharing that unironically, that article that you're talking about with the SS Waif in Canada, and I'm just stunned, speechless, just by the whole thing.
Listen, man, there's this whole kind of class of our people who are like very liberal shit libby. Dude, I went to fucking Delphi yesterday, and coming back, I had the whole back of the bus right behind me was like a family of 6 of these fucking people. 50 years of gym teachers teaching civics is what got us here with Trump. I had to listen to that fucking shit for 2.5 hours.
Right.
Well, at least you're not a teacher. At least you guys aren't teachers in the Massachusetts public schools. I work with some of the biggest shitlibs in the country, and got to go to a meeting tomorrow regarding one of my colleagues.
Actually, I think they were from Massachusetts.
Oh,
the people.
Of course.
I heard them say, yeah.
No, naturally.
Yeah, they actually mentioned you. Yeah, they were talking about how much of a Trumper and a right winger you were, on the bus. You, David.
Yeah.
All right, my friend. Well, thank you for the call. We're gonna read some. Super chats and get out of here.
Nice
but thank you
talking
for
to you, Tusker. Thank you.
Thank you for the comment. Appreciate it. All right. Should we take some more super chats before we get out of here? Janice Anderson, thanks for the $4.99. Green Day, Haha, You're Dead is another fitting song. Yeah, especially the line, you were an asshole, been running through my head since I heard she died. You're talking about Dianne Feinstein. Yeah, did you comment that at the beginning of the show, or was that on Twitter? I saw you post that. I think I saw it. I think that may have been at the beginning. Thank you, Kristen Fierio. Thank you for the 150 pesos. You can give Peter Thiel my number. Well, if I knew him, I could, but I don't. He's never asked me for mine.
We're trying to figure out how to apply for those Thiel bucks.
Exactly, yes. DC, thanks for the $2. I like my milk toast black. Thank you very much.
That's good.
Yeah. I never drink wine, says Dave Delarai. Dave Delarai, I haven't seen you here in a while.
I caught that. That's the famous line from the original Dracula.
I never drink wine. Oh, right. Is that from the silent one? Wine. Yeah. Excuse me. Boeing 757 pilot. Good discussion. Thanks. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. Very nice.
Grazie.
Appreciate it. Justin Watson, won't be nice to Grumbine. See, this is what I mean. See, we well, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do about you guys? We can't bring people. We can't bring people in here with you guys.
That's why Peter wanted to come on the show. We told him they'll eat you alive, Jordan.
Well, let's talk after, and hopefully, maybe I can get you guys a connection.
Interesting. All right. Steve E. became a YouTube member. Thank you. That's very kind of you. Appreciate that. Thank you so much. Franklin Warsham, thanks for the $1.99. Those who don't own property become property. Yes, Franklin is... No, wait, was that you who said something similar to that before? I forgot. Those who don't own property become property. Will S., thanks for the $2. When AOC says Mama Bear... read it as pimp. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Good point. Albert Bormont, thanks for the $5. Tusker misgendered me at Applebee's in 2007. Haunts me to this day. Oh, well, it's going to have to be canceled. Sorry.
I'm sorry. Voluntary gulag service for me.
Hey, you know, it was those were different times. You know, people weren't as hip to all that. You know, cut her a little slack.
A lot of Americans still had their houses. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Dave Delarai, thanks for the $12. Got 5 chapters, through Kelton's audiobook. Almost says how it works, never quite does. Whenever I paused, I still didn't know if she fully explained. Months ago now, be surprised if rock crystals weren't involved. Yeah, I read like the first chapter. I'm not any bit of the way through it yet.
Read the whole thing whenever it came out. She talks about buckets a lot. It didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I'm not buckets? Saying that like she like it's essentially, and I appreciate her for it. What she's trying to do is she's really trying to simplify it. She breaks it down to like a bucket analogy as far as like the money supply, and you have to watch the bucket of money here and the bucket of money here. And so the key to inflation is essentially inflation isn't necessarily an issue. It's that you have to control the amount of money that's in circulation. And so increase or reduce taxes, like increasing taxes isn't necessarily a bad thing, and reducing taxes isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's all about controlling the amount of money that is in circulation in the economy. So that's kind of what I think is the most barest bones argument of MMT comes from. But you know, I'm not an expert. It sounds like magical thinking to me, but you know, and that's coming from someone that's read Stephanie Kelton. You know, I've followed some MMTers. I am kind of well aware of some of the theories. I'm just, because I'm not invested in it, I'm not a great spokesperson for it because I don't believe in it.
Good answer. Quintessential. Thanks for the $25. Chomsky doesn't like third-party voting. Will there be juicy drama between him and Cornel West? I don't know if Chomsky's capable of generating juicy drama at this stage in his life. So I don't know, but we will see. I don't think he will endorse any kind of third-party candidate. I'd be shocked if he did. Kuznetsky Bassane, thanks for the $4.99. Appreciate that, my friend. And Russell's asking if his mic is off. Talk.
Maybe.
One way to test. Yeah, no, you're muted now. I don't know what. Yeah, now you're muted. You got to unmute. I'm trying to unmute you.
Unplug it, plug back in.
But I can't. Yeah, maybe. I don't know if that's. Yeah, I don't know what that's about.
Standard IP thing. And then, you know, just try some of those things.
Well, luckily, this is Russell's last show using this technology for a long time. So if there was a time for it to break, now would be the exact time, like literally right at the end of the last show that you'll be using this for. So you guys got any lines of communication? Says 7 and a switchblade. Thank you for the $5. You guys got any lines of communication with the socialists who are running? You're talking about Claudia de la Cruz, I assume, for 2024. I'd love to see an interview with them. Yeah, that'd be interesting. We don't have a line of communication open to them, but I assume we could probably get one. Yeah, I assume.
Savvy had him on, so just holler at Savvy.
Yeah, I'm assuming we could probably get them, and that would be interesting. Yes, I would like that very much. Mount Dew Ramen, thank you very much. Appreciate that. For becoming a YouTube member. That is a huge help. So thank you guys all very, very much for your support. We'll see if Russell can make it back in here to say a quick goodbye before we hang it up for the evening. But thank you guys very much for being here tonight. We appreciate you. Bonzo Beans is from Switzerland. That is what Jake has told us. So Bonzo Beans are from Switzerland. And Shard2419, thanks for the $1. It hasn't been used in practice yet because it was these asshats. If it was, these asshats would be out of a job. You're talking about MMT. All righty. Well, folks, I got... Oh, look at that. Tusker's going to fill in and do our courage because it looks like Russell is... right. Oh, now you're on. Tusker went and got a little thing. In fact, Tusker, you should use that anyway because it's probably better than what Russell has. So maybe we'll let you do the sign-off.
Sounds good.
What is it?
I have a standard kitchen pot and...
Definitely anything I have to hand right now.
Jake, I got that last Rumble rant, right? You just messaged me that there was one left. I think I got that one, right? Because I'm only seeing that one on the banner. I'm good. Okay, cool. All righty, folks. Well, thank you very much for being here tonight. We appreciate you. As always, we will be back here Friday morning, 9 a.m. with Russell back in New York City. So thank you all very much for this evening. Please hit us up at patreon.com/DoDissident. Support the show if you can. What's that?
I do miss that New York smell, that combination of ozone and urine and car exhaust.
Well, now it'll be nice because now the air will be a little crisper and cooler, so maybe it won't be as bad. You know, summer's over. Although it has been hot here in New York these past few days. It was like 77. Yeah, it was rough. But thank you guys very much for being here. We will see you back here Friday morning. You can support the show, patreon.com/DoDissidents or DoDissidents.substack.com. Go join our Substack for free, even if you can't sign up as a paid member. Really helps you stay in touch with us. You get audio podcast versions of all these live streams, as well as newsletter alerts when and where we're going to be going live. So make sure you stay in touch. Hit that subscribe button. We're closing in on 13,000 subscribers. We are getting very, very close. We are currently at 12,966. And if you're over on Rumble, give us a follow over there. Thank you once again. We will see you back here Friday morning. Until we do meet again, be safe and be well. Tusker, hit it.
Courage.
Ooh, I thought. Try hitting the other end. The open end.
God, this is
No.
embarrassing.
Turn it over. No, turn it over. There you go. Hit the open side of the bowl. Yeah.
Sorry, not a musician, guys.
That might work
but
better.
I'm
Might
gonna
not.
change
It
up
might
a little
not.
bit.
I'm not saying it will. Give it a shot.
I'm going to change it up. Solidarity.
Solidarity. Okay. Perfect. Folks, thank you. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Please clap.